1:19. I'm going to call, we have a quorum of the board present. I'm going to call, reconvene the regular meeting of the State Board of Education. We're at public participation. Ms. Evans, are there individuals who wish to address the board during today's meeting?
Yes, there are people who have registered to provide public comment today, and I will review the rules. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to address the board, and I will monitor the time. We will strictly follow the time limit to ensure everyone has an equal opportunity to speak. Please finish your sentence and conclude your comments when the timer expires. Thank you for your cooperation. It is the practice of the board not to respond to comments during the public participation portion of the meeting. We will maintain an atmosphere of respect for everyone. Anyone who disrespects another person, whether by name or in any other way, will be asked to stop. Public participation will take place both in person and online. We will begin with the individuals physically present with us today, and then move to those waiting in the queue online. First person in the room today is Kristen Lee. And whenever you're ready, you have a seat, and then your 3 minutes may begin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kristen Lee from Livonia. I serve as the Michigan Education Director of Citizens Defending Freedom, a faith-based, nonpartisan organization. I begin by extending a sincere welcome to our new state superintendent, Dr. Maleko. With this new leadership and a new year ahead, it's important to remember the public is watching you. Even when you don't think they are, you are being watched. This is an opportunity to raise your own bar of leadership and restore public trust in education and focus on academics, honoring parents per MCL 380.10, and foster order, excellence, and clarity and transparency. One area I recognized that you could show leadership and strength is modeling excellent order of your meetings as they pertain to Robert's Rules of Order. Please stay focused on the issue, maintain decorum, and call colleagues out of order when needed. In particular, previous question or call to question is never in order when another member has the floor. It requires a second, no debate, and 2/3 vote to close debate before voting on the previous motion, per Robert's Rules, Section 16. Last month's meeting missed this vote twice. There is no friendly or unfriendly amendment. All motions and amendments follow the same rules: first, second, discussion or debate, and the vote per Section 12. Misusing these terms suggests hostility when collaboration is needed. Ironically, no one in the public considers it friendly to cut public comments from 3 minutes to 1.5 minutes or even 1 minute. Some nerdy humor. And the bylaws which you set aside to do so must be reinstated by vote, and they were not. Second, please update your minutes for bare minimum or full transparency. Provide verbatim transcripts with links to reports, or limit minutes to actions and exact vote tallies, not subjective summaries, since videos and agendas are public. Current minutes omit whether public comments supported or opposed items, while other sections have detailed summaries. This inconsistency and potentially biased narrative erodes our trust. Third, it is unfortunate you missed the mark on the recently approved health education standards. You had an opportunity to lead, instead you chose to follow. Very disappointing, and the only way you could restore some confidence is to rescind these standards, which still include controversial topics in mandatory classes. By doing so, you could prevent the confusion at our teacher education institutions, and that has already been seen in some of our local districts. Lastly, this department and board must know the difference and be clear. Michigan parents have a statutory right to a vaccine exemption. The waiver process put in place by a promulgated rule has put undue burden on parents in its application. Do not misguide the public by interchanging waivers and exemptions. Members of the board, I do thank you for your service. You set the bar for education in our state. Please raise the standard in these areas and model academic excellence and increase dedication to cooperation with parents in Michigan.
Thank you for your comment today.
And for this
Thank you for your
opportunity to
comment
speak.
today. Next person in the room is Catherine Boussard. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Boussard. I'm a local school board member. I also serve as the executive director of Salt and Light Global. Today I speak in my personal capacity. Welcome, Dr. Maleko. I hope that this new era will bring good changes for education across the state of Michigan. I wanted to start with a quick story. The year was 1865, and a particular general was leaving the home of a family where a treaty had just been signed. And he there, as he came down the stairs, saw a man with brown skin, black hair, and he paused and was slightly taken aback. And then he said, "At least there's one real American here." And those words were spoken by General Lee to a gentleman who actually served throughout the war as General Grant's really right-hand man. He was a ranking member of the Union Army and also a Seneca Indian, Eli Parker. And without missing a beat, Eli Parker responded to Grant, "We are all Americans here." And I think what he said in so few words was very profound. We're all Americans here. The things that some would say divide us, the things that some would seek to teach in a way that would highlight victims and oppressors and so many differences that would instill deeper generational divisions based on wrongs in the history of our nation or based on even mistellings of that history. Those type of arguments do very little to bring us together as a society. And we need to remember what education in this state is about. Our Constitution says that education, it's for religion, morality, and knowledge, being necessary for good governance and the happiness of mankind. The means of education shall forever be encouraged. We want to promote a society where everyone can thrive, but we can only do that when we truly focus on the things that we have in common, the things that unite us, when we remember that your history and all of our shared experiences are part of what we share as Americans, what we can learn from one another. And I listened to the presentation this morning, and I'm not sure that that spirit was there. I've also watched over the last several months as this board works together, and I see that often minority voices are not treated with the same respect as others. They're treated disparately just because they might have a difference of opinion or because one might be a man or a woman. I've seen that the views of those who come here with very sincere religious values or views of other minorities are not treated with the same respect as others. And I would just encourage this board that you are the example for the state of Michigan. You're the example for boards like mine at the local level. How you treat each other matters. People are watching. Can we remember the words of Eli Parker? Can we remember the lesson he taught us? We are all Americans. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Aaron Backman. Thank you. Once you're seated, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Erin Backman. I've been an educator for the past 12 years teaching secondary math in Detroit public schools as well as charter and private schools in Metro Detroit. I'm now Advocare Director at We Care Foster Care, a nonprofit that provides educational opportunities and community-connected resources to children in foster care and young adults who have aged out of the system. In Michigan, there are over 10,000 children in foster care, and their statistics are bleak. In 2025, the four-year graduation rate was merely 39%, the lowest for any student group, and well below the state average of 80%. There are a myriad of factors that contribute to this statistic. Research estimates that students lose 4 to 6 months of academic progress every time they change schools. Fosters attend 6, 8, 10, often more schools throughout their K-12 experience. Math is not difficult. Years of learning are lost. Fosters are also dealing with the trauma that put them into foster care in the first place. Most live in poverty and in struggling communities. And some of the achievement loss is due to systemic failures on the part of our education system. Student records and paperwork are often mishandled or lost, leading to months of delay in proper class placement and services. Home placement changes can lead to mid-semester school transfers, which leads to non-completion of credit-bearing courses, plus widely varying district policies regarding grading and course enrollment. It is unreasonable to expect a child to navigate such a complicated and intertwined educational, welfare, and judicial system. We must do better. One major step towards doing better would be an online comprehensive record system that mirrors or replaces a child's cumulative student record folder, CA60, and is accessible to the courts, schools, and other relevant systems. This should include educational records and social service records of importance. Educational records would include transcripts, academic records of student progress, IEPs, attendance records, and standardized test scores. Social service records would include things like the School Notification and Education Records Release Form DHS 942. Policies as to when a student may access their own online record should be written with foster students in mind. Typically, only a parent or student over the age of 18 can access these records. What happens when a foster youth does not have a parent to access this file? They are left without recourse. Another step would be ensuring all foster children have the ability to earn credits for completion of a course prior to being transferred to a different school. No school accepts a quarter credit for a half semester of work, and teachers are simply too overloaded to provide a quarter's worth of makeup work for a mid-year transfer. The norm should be that foster students who receive a new home placement do not change schools except at the semester or year's end. There are many complex problems that need to be urgently addressed. We need to find solutions to support and care for our foster children so they can be successful students and citizens. An online comprehensive record system is needed, and we must minimize mid-course school transitions to reduce learning disruption. Thank you for your time and consideration. Again, my name is Erin Backman, and I am here with We Care Foster Care. We want to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Eckner. And as she's approaching the table, board members, you'll see that you have a green folder in front of you and that accompanies this comment. Whenever you're ready, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Maleko, and department staff. My name is Heather Eckner, and I serve as the Director of Statewide Education for the Autism Alliance of Michigan. We would like to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Maleko as you join the department and participate in your first state board meeting. The Autism Alliance looks forward to working with you as Michigan strengthens its educational system for students with disabilities. Last week, the Michigan Parent Advocate and Attorney Coalition, also known as MyPAC, powered by the Autism Alliance, hosted the 2025 Special Education Advocacy Day and Summit in Lansing. Parents, advocates, educators, and partner organizations came together with a shared message. Michigan's special education system is overdue for bold, coordinated, and sustained transformation. The stories shared by families and practitioners alongside the data presented were both sobering and clarifying, affirming that incremental adjustments are no longer enough. Central to the summit were the recommendations of the Michigan Special Education Finance Reform Blueprint, alongside the findings of the 2025 Michigan Special Education Benchmark Report, the first statewide report to document Michigan's uneven access to troublingly low student outcomes across disability categories. Together, the two reports highlight the same reality. Michigan's current system is not designed or resourced to deliver inclusive, high-quality education that students with disabilities deserve and are guaranteed under the law. Participants of the Advocacy Summit stressed the consequences of ongoing misalignment. Districts face chronic staffing shortages, insufficient reimbursements, and outdated allocation formulas. Families encounter persistent delays in evaluations, inconsistent access to interventions, and fragmented supports. And Michigan's outcomes, graduation rates, dropout rates, and proficiency continue to fall far below national averages. These system-level barriers demand system-level solutions. The My Special Education Blueprint gives Michigan a roadmap. The benchmark report adds a sense of urgency. Michigan cannot meaningfully close gaps without simultaneously addressing funding adequacy, educator capacity, early identification, inclusive placement, and robust progress monitoring. The benchmark report lays out clear metrics that the state can use to measure improvement, not in paperwork compliance, but in student learning, well-being, and long-term success. Parents and educators at the summit emphasized that they are not asking for new mandates. They are asking Michigan to build a system capable of meeting the mandates already in place to ensure that zip code does not determine access and opportunity, where the least restrictive environment is a reality rather than an aspiration, and that students with disabilities are supported to graduate with real options for college, career, and community living. Michigan students with disabilities cannot wait another generation for the systems they need to succeed. We look forward to working together with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Last person in the room today is Genevieve Peters-Scott. Thank you. You may have a seat, and whenever you're ready, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Genevieve Peters-Scott, and I'm running for the United States Senate here in Michigan. As a former educator and advocate for Michigan families, I am deeply concerned about the State Board of Education's new health education standards. While reviewing the 75-page document, I found a critical flaw in the board's reasoning. The guidelines claim that teaching gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation aligns with the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. I reviewed the law carefully and found no such alignment. In fact, the board has misrepresented the act, risking the politicalization of classrooms, eroding parental rights, and diverting attention from Michigan's urgent academic challenges. Elliott Larson passed in 1976, and it protects against access discrimination. It does not mandate curriculum. It talks about employment, housing, public accommodations, and education. In 2023, the amendment added sexual orientation, and these protections are, again, about equal access, not what is taught in the classroom. They do not require schools to teach lessons on gender fluidity, sexual orientation, or identity. There is no statute or court ruling requiring Michigan schools to teach gender identity. In Roche versus World versus Department of Civil Rights in 2022, the Michigan Supreme Court clarified that the Elliott Larson protections were about discrimination, not curriculum. Doe versus Alpena Public Schools 2024 addressed school responsibility for harassment. It did not require instruction on identity, gender identity. Framing identity lessons as a civil rights obligation is a false and disingenuous pressure on districts to adopt them, even though there is no legal obligation to do so. Linking Elliott Larson to the curriculum is either ill-informed or intentional to force unnecessary gender ideology into the state's curriculum. Schools are already required to protect students through policies like the Matt Epling Safe School Law in Michigan, which mandates anti-bullying protections for all students. Schools must respond to harassment. Parents have fought very hard in Michigan to confirm laws that districts have authority over curriculum, not the State Board of Education. State standards are advisory, not mandatory, yet the new guidelines embed contested identity topics into health education. Michigan families deserve the truth. Parents must hold lawmakers here and the State Board of Education accountable and remove this misrepresentation and overreach disguised as compliance. My name is Genevieve Peter Scott. I'm running for the United States Senate, and you can read my full op-ed in the Detroit News. It just dropped today. Thank you.
Today, thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move to the queue online. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. If you'd please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Thank you so much for your time today. Hello, my name is Allison Matthews. I am located at 885 Richard Drive, Harrison, Michigan, 48625 in Clare County. Our family wanted to explain some extenuating circumstances on why our children, 7th, 6th, and 3rd graders are no longer school of choice students in Gladwin Community Schools, but rather online K-12 students through High Point Virtual Academy of Michigan. Since October of 2024, our 13-year-old daughter has now endured ongoing constant toxic harassment and bullying from a number of students. We have been documenting all instances of bullying and harassment as of now 9, which have included but are not limited to racial slurs via school email, verbal hate speech, verbal body shaming, social isolation, and more. I've exhausted all school resources, including countless phone calls, student reports, and in-person visits specifically with the principal of the Gladwin Junior High School, Mr. Mazoff, but also the Dean of Students, Mr. Wetmore, our local Gladwin Community School Board meetings, and the Superintendent, Charles Frisbee, who has actually recorded stating, "I do not believe that this is even a thing. I've seen the evidence, and I do not believe you." The administration has been touting progressive discipline over the last 2 school years, that this harassment and bullying has been taking place as their means to change any negative behavior. It is more than obvious that the safety and well-being of our children was in question, and absolutely no change in behavior had been seen whatsoever. After contacting the resource officer for Gladwin Community Schools, we were enlightened to know we could request an investigation with supplied evidence. Criminal charges for the minimal, but not limited to, cyberbullying, hate speech, and harassment are now pending against our daughter's harasser. Our family is looking for not only the harassers to be held accountable, but also the administration of Gladwin Community School District, Charles Frisbee, Superintendent, David Mazoff, Junior High Principal, and Anthony Wetmore, Junior High Dean of Students. We ask that an investigation into why these children were failed by their supervisors be conducted. We hope this helps the future of Gladwin Community Schools and the future of all our schools in Michigan. Thank you so much for your time today. Sincerely, Allison Matthews.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yes, I
It's
can.
still me.
Hello?
Ms. Matthews, you can go ahead and end the call so that we can move to the next caller. Thank you. Yes, caller, if you could please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Judith New. I've been an attorney, LGIL, and educational advocate since 1990. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to you today in support of We Care Foster Care and the young adults in our efforts to improve education of all people, young people in the state, especially those in foster care and juvenile justice, and their barriers to receiving an appropriate education. These minors change schools in significant.
Are you still there, caller?
I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
You
I
can
don't notice whether to start.
go ahead and continue. YouTube that you have in the background is behind a little bit, and so your comment is
Okay.
live. Yep.
All right. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
These minors change schools in significantly increased proportions to the average Michigan student, coming from residential programs which deliver no credit courses for the months, even years, that they are in placement. While some improvements have been made, the problems persist. Many, many years ago, Michigan Children's Law Center, as an attorney group in the Wayne County Juvenile Court, developed and began an educational advocacy program. Fred Gruber and I, when asked, provided educational advocacy to any young person under the jurisdiction of the juvenile court. Then the specialty programs, Juvenile Mental Health Court, and then STAND, took me on as an advocate. After a few years, the Wayne County Juvenile Court developed a standardization of the program for all of the attorney groups contracted by the court. I believe Wayne County Juvenile Mental Health Court continues to have the only large-scale advocacy program in the state. During these years, pre-pandemic, CEPI, the Center for Educational Performance and Information, announced the ability for receiving schools to electronically receive the educational records from original school districts. I have emails of my contact with CEPI dating back to 2017 and spoke with the director of the program requesting that LGALs be provided access to this service. Many months were spent attempting to get authorization from the MDE without success. During the pandemic, DHHS announced that LGALs would be given access to the educational records the department kept. That also did not come to fruition. I give this historical background to illustrate this is not a new thought. Stakeholders have been attempting to coordinate the various state-level departments that have systematically created these barriers.
Thank you, caller, for
Unintentionally,
your
I am
comment
sure.
today. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. If you could please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Cassandra McLaurin, Flint, Michigan.
Very good.
I may speak now.
Yes, go ahead, please. Yep.
Hello, my name is Cassandra McLaurin, and I am currently a foster youth. I'm here today to speak to you from my own experience about the challenges foster youth face, especially in the need for intermediate school records, transfer, and consistent support. Every new placement can mean a new school. Every move means waiting on your records to be transferred, getting lost, getting delayed, or forgotten.
And in those gaps, those weeks or months where our files haven't been caught up, we lose time, credits, and sometimes we lose confidence. That's why immediate school record transfers matters to me so much. Because when our records follow us right away, we don't have to keep repeating classes. We're set up for success. We don't have to be placed in courses that don't match. We don't have to sit in classrooms feeling smaller, quieter, or less capable than the other students beside us. Immediate transfer gives us what every student deserves: a fair chance, a clean start that doesn't erase the work that we've already done. When foster youth have the protection, when our academic history travels with us instantly, we gain more than credits. We gain hope, gain confidence, and we begin to raise our hands and ask questions. We gain the belief that we're not behind, that we're capable and can succeed like everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Hi, I can hear you.
Very good. If you please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Andrews, and I'm from Michigan. I'm the Communications Director for Park West Foundation, and I'll be providing public comment on behalf of FY Tech. We need laws that guarantee the immediate transfer of school records for students in foster care and ensuring that parents and guardians are protected and supported with these students with every step. When records are delayed, students lose valuable instructional time, fall behind academically, and experience unnecessary stress during an already unstable period. Quick record transfer helps schools provide proper services right away. Likewise, consistent support for parents and or guardians strengthens family stability and keeps children connected to the adults advocating for them. These protections are essential to reducing educational disruption and promoting the safety, well-being, and long-term success of every child and the families they are in. When these protections are put into place, the future for children and families becomes more stable, equitable, and hopeful. Students in foster care will transition between schools smoothly with immediate record transfer, ensuring they never lose weeks of learning or services. Schools will be able to support them on day one using accurate information to meet their academic and emotional needs. Parents and guardians will remain connected and empowered through consistent support, which in return strengthens family stability. Clear laws will also improve coordination between schools and child welfare agencies. Ultimately, these changes will lead to better attendance, stronger achievement, and long-term success for every child and family. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. If you would please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
My name is Elena Markham. I'm calling from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Can I start?
Go ahead. Yes, please.
Okay. So I am a foster youth advocate with FY Tech. I'm also a certified therapeutic recreational specialist, a college coach for foster youth in Detroit and the Metro Detroit area, as well as a Master's of Science for Recreational Therapy 2026 candidate at Grand Valley State University. I'm here today not only as a foster youth advocate, but as someone who has lived what far too many young people in Michigan are still living. For thousands of foster youth across our state, education is not about learning, it is survival. It is a chance to rewrite the narrative that the world has already written for us. But too often, that chance is interrupted or forfeited due to placement or failed systems that do not serve our youth. Every school move due to a placement change becomes a drop credit. Every lack of transportation becomes a missed opportunity. Every time a student has to start over, the system reminds them that they were never expected to finish. The truth is, it's not their potential that's failing them, it's the system failing their potential. Foster youth deserve access to quality education, regardless of their zip code, the case number, or the circumstances that place them in care. Michigan must ensure that our schools recognize the trauma, resilience, and brilliance foster youth bring into the classroom. We need policies that prioritize school stability, curriculum fluidity, mental health support, and transition support from very district placements. Our adversity shouldn't be a punishment, but it should be embraced as a strength. When we invest in our foster youth, we are not just helping individual children, we are securing a stronger economic future for our communities as well. Every young person who graduates, who secures a career, has the capacity to become a leader, creating stability during transitional phases, and decreasing crisis management as youth continue to age out. That is the life contribution. That is a life contributing back into Michigan's workforce and therefore supporting our economy. We have the opportunity right now to shift outcomes, to build systems that say to every foster youth, you are seen, you are capable, you are worth investing in. And we will walk with you not just until you turn 18, but until you actually succeed. I did not thrive because of the system, because the system was perfect. I thrived because people advocated for me, believed in me, and provided support where the system lacked it. Imagine what would happen if that support were guaranteed not by chance but by design. Michigan can and honestly should become a state where foster youth are given the stability, community, and education that they deserve. Um, that's my public statement. Like I said, I am currently a
Thank
graduate
you for your
student
call
at.
today, dear.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Hello? Yes, I do now. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. If you'd please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
My name is Sandra Carlan. I'm calling from Novi, Michigan, and I'm calling in regards to the MSU MDHHS at last week's webinar that apparently some people are looking to introduce 5 bills to restrict medical vaccine freedom. And I feel very strongly, especially with all the things that have come out since COVID, and I have a dead brother-in-law to prove it, that not all things are as they appear. And we don't know everything about every vaccine, and this should be a matter of choice. People should be free to choose them. I have a friend who lost his job as a firefighter because he refused to get the vaccine for COVID. And I don't think we should ever be losing jobs and being restricted in our education and things because we don't make the same choice as someone else. This is the United States of America, and I don't feel comfortable with laws that are made or efforts that are made to coerce people to make decisions about their own body that is not their choice. And we're not talking about the choice of another body person living inside you, but we're talking about my physical body. No one should have to make laws that relate to that, especially when the CDC is coming up with the information that Robert Kennedy is finding about some of these inoculations. And for our military, too, I think these things should be not mandatory, but a matter of the choice of the person whose body it is. If I want to expose myself to the risks of being unvaccinated, even though Henry Ford had a study that showed that unvaccinated people actually were healthier, I think until they come up with actual evidence that these things work. Well, I was told in the beginning that you wouldn't get COVID and you couldn't spread it if you got the COVID vaccine, and that turned out to not be correct. So I really feel strongly a matter of not mandating anything and letting people choose as far as what they want done with their vaccination status. And I encourage everyone to watch an inconvenient study that was the Henry Ford study that showed that children are much healthier that are unvaccinated in almost all categories. And again, that's called an inconvenient study, and it was a study of Henry Ford Hospital. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to get this information out there.
Thank you.
I volunteer my time back.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
This is still me.
It's okay. We're going to the next one. You can hang up now.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. If you'll please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes. Oh, we lost him.
As a former educator and advocate for
Hello?
Michigan
Caller,
families,
can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi, thank you. If you could please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes of public comment.
All right. My name is Carol Riam from Dundee, Michigan. Dear members of the Michigan State Board of Education, as a concerned Michigan parent and advocate for individual rights, I am here to strongly urge you to protect parental authority and bodily autonomy in all matters related to education and health, particularly regarding vaccine policies. With vaccines on today's agenda and the potential introduction of bills that could restrict medical freedoms, it is crucial that we prioritize the fundamental rights of families over coercive mandates. Parents have the inherent right to make informed decisions about their children's health and education without undue interference from the state. Bodily autonomy is a cornerstone of our democracy, ensuring that no one, especially children, is subjected to medical interventions without consent. Imposing stricter vaccine requirements or limiting exemptions undermines these principles and erodes trust in our public institutions. Michigan families deserve the freedom to choose based on their personal beliefs, medical histories, and consultations with their health care providers, not one-size-fits-all policies driven by external pressures. I respectfully ask the board to oppose any measures that diminish parental rights, such as the proposed package of bills from Democrats that could further restrict vaccine freedoms. Instead, focus on supporting informed choice, transparency, and access to education for all students, regardless of vaccination status. Let's keep Michigan a state that values liberty and family sovereignty. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. If you'd please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Dr. Christina Parks. I have a PhD in cellular and molecular biology from the Department of Immunology at the University of Michigan. And I want to clarify that they were saying in the presentation that the problem with children not being vaccinated with MMR is because of vaccine misinformation. And they were saying that the CDC had information that was in fact correct. Well, the truth is that the CDC itself did a study in the early 2000s that found that Black boys were 3.86 times more likely to get an autism diagnosis if they were vaccinated on time with the MMR vaccine, and than if they were vaccinated late after 3 years. And then the CDC shredded those data and published the study without those data. We know this because senior scientist on that study, Dr. William Thompson, came out in 2014 as a whistleblower and submitted all of this information to Congressman Bill Posey, and we've been waiting for congressional hearings. So one of the things is that parents can at least take some comfort if they felt the need to vaccinate their child with the MMR vaccine. Then the measles component of that should give, it's a live viral vaccine, it should give relatively good immunity, so their child should not be at risk. However, for the rest of parents, we need to stop gaslighting them and offer individual measles, mumps, and rubella vaccines that do not have the same risk of autism. As a scientist, there is actually a lot of data and scientific studies showing plausible mechanisms. In fact, Dr. Gregory Poland at the Mayo Clinic did studies showing that the immune systems of people from African descent actually are much more sensitive to the MMR and that they may need a lower dose. However, that information has not been disseminated. So until parents have better choices, they are going to continue to opt out. This is where we need to require our regulatory agencies, such as the CDC, to provide actually true and accurate information, not shred data, and we need to support our parents. Luckily, Michigan does have 3 exemptions, but at this time, we need to actually provide our parents with the support they need in supporting their child's immune system, in giving them access to education, and basically not gaslighting them and telling them that they are receiving misinformation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. If you please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Sheila from Macomb. Hi, everyone. I couldn't be there in person because of the snow. But let's talk about what Genevieve just said. Remember, I was there last month, and I actually said that because people like to get on video and sit there and tout that they know what the Elliott Larson law is about. Yeah. It's not about putting gender ideology into health guidelines. That's not what it's about. So Genevieve is right, as was I last month. So going on, first off, funny how we can see the gallery right now and we couldn't last month when there were so many people there against all of these guidelines. But yeah, you didn't want to show that. Yeah, got it. So I'm not going to go over the inconvenient study, as somebody just said, because I was going to tell you about the Dr. Zervos, but she already said go watch it. Yeah, that study showed that kids that are vaccinated are highly likely to be more sick than kids that are unvaccinated. But go check it out yourself. As board members, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to do the research. So, and, you know, we shouldn't be politicizing any of this. You know, the fact that people don't take vaccines has nothing to do with politics. It's actually about harm. And the first thing that doctors are supposed to do is no harm, no harm. And so by board members saying that it's political, shame on you. That is dismissing people that have been vaccine injured, and that is something that you don't know about. You may want to go investigate it. So with all these vaccines that we have out there now, we are actually more sicker than we've ever been. Why is that? Perplexing. And the other thing I'll say is I can see you guys scrolling and working on stuff in the background. You guys should be paying more attention to what actually is being said. But anyways, kudos to Maha for doing what we've actually elected them to do. So yeah. Do you know what actually helps viruses and illness not intrude into the body? Do you know what that is? It's not a shot, not a vaccine. It's actually your gut health. It starts in the microbiome, and if you have good microbiome, which that's what we should be teaching, then actually your body is much more prepared to handle those viruses and not get sick. Guess what? I didn't get the shot. I didn't wear a mask, and I didn't get COVID, all because I have a good microbiome. You should do your research, as board members should do. So, board, your job is not medical at all. You're the State Board of Education. Let me say that again. Academics, education. Your job is not medical. You are not here to get in between the parents and the child.
Thank you for your call today.
MDHHS.
Thank you, caller, for your call today. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. If you could please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Julie Highland from Shelby Township. I'm a mom of 3, and I am not for restricting vaccine freedom. This morning there was a question that was asked, and forgive me, I can't remember who it was, but the question was, are there actually vaccine injuries? And you can go to the CDC website, and it states right on their website that saying that vaccines do not cause autism is not evidence-based, and studies have not ruled out the possibility that vaccines cause autism. In 1983, there were only 10 vaccines on the schedule, and 1 in 10,000 kids were diagnosed with autism. In 2013, there were 24 vaccines on the schedule, and 1 in 88 kids were diagnosed with autism. Today, there are 72 vaccines on the schedule, and 1 in 32 kids are diagnosed with autism. So the choice to vaccinate, again, like was stated with the previous caller, is not politically motivated, and that was also mentioned this morning. It's parents actually doing research and making the best decision for their children. When my child was diagnosed with autism, there was a 3-year wait list for him to get diagnosed, which meant there was 3 years waiting for him to get services that he needed, because you can't get services without an official diagnosis. So kids and parents should definitely not have to suffer because the Board of Education wants to get them vaccinated. And I assume that this is on the radar because there are more and more parents not vaccinating. And the reality is that if the board keeps changing policies that the population is not in favor of, they're going to stop using the services altogether, and you will continue to see an increase in homeschool. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you. If you please
How
state
are
your
you?
name.
Let me quick turn I'm going to quick turn that off. Okay. Hi,
Sure.
my name is Karen DeVries, and I am a mom and grandma from Holland, Michigan. It was stated this morning that Michigan is a permissive state when it comes to allowing parents to have exemptions for vaccines. So tell me, how is this a bad thing? Personal health care freedom is non-negotiable. The statements that vaccines are safe and effective and that the MMR vaccine has specifically been thoroughly tested for risk versus benefit is really not true. This statement ignores the long list of serious trial adverse events and the fact that there are no innate placebo-controlled trials of vaccines. One of the board members demanded studies to prove any challenges to the safe and effective narrative. One thing you could do is look through the book Turtles All the Way Down. Basically, the current argument is if there is see no evil or hear no evil, it must be safe and effective. There's another book called Vaccines and the Diseases They Target by Physicians for Informed Consent. They talk about the fact that the decline of measles really was not related to the vaccine. It went from 13.3 per 100,000 down to 0.2 per 100,000 before the measles vaccines. There are treatments available for measles. There's actual long-term benefits for naturally acquired measles. The MMR vaccine actually wanes in protection by age 15, which can allow for a teenager or young adult to actually carry the measles virus without knowing it while being contagious. So to suggest that unvaccinated are the ones that spread measles is simply not substantiated. The MMR vaccine insert also states that it has not been evaluated for carcinogenic and mutagenic potential or impairment of fertility. So therefore, long-term risk is unknown. Vaccine companies cannot be sued for vaccine deaths and harms because of the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986. Childhood vaccines are the only product in America where you can not ever sue the company for liability for death or injury on the basis that that company could have made a better product. As a result, the vaccine schedule has exploded. And if so, if vaccines are so safe, why do they still need this protection? So my summary is this: the science of vaccines is far from settled to be safe and effective. Therefore, personal health choices must be protected. Informed consent for medical treatment should never be removed by our government or agencies or Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. If you could please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Emma. I live in Oakland County. I'm a former mental health practitioner. I used to work with kids with autism. I was also vaccine injured as a child. This led to an autoimmune disease, seizures, and the loss of typical childhood experiences. I now work closely with incredible professionals in the natural health world, but most importantly, I'm a mom to school-age children in Michigan. When you're comparing Michigan to other states, while completing a waiver here is not terribly difficult, it is significantly more work than getting an exemption in Minnesota, where I used to live, just so you're aware. I simply had to complete one piece of paper there. It was very easy. While there is choice in Michigan, which is wonderful, not all parents realize this. At the end of the day, your recommendations do coerce parents into doing something that they may not otherwise be comfortable with, simply because they're misinformed and don't know that they have a choice. Overall, this topic doesn't have to be political. It's often a heated topic because it's coming from a deep place of caring for children, our most valuable and vulnerable asset. While we're all on the same team, when we're putting kids first and their well-being first, and it's important to remember that. I want to touch on a few things I heard at the meeting earlier. It was said that child deaths due to vaccine-preventable diseases are preventable. I just want to highlight that at the same time, deaths due to vaccines, which does happen, as well as lifelong side effects from vaccines, are also both very preventable. Vaccine death is real and it is preventable, but much like the ill effects from an infection, death is an extreme and not common reaction. Because pertussis was mentioned, I wanted to highlight that the pertussis vaccine does not stop one from spreading it. It lessens the severity of the illness. And if anything, that can increase the spread because people do not realize that they have it. My own children were affected by this when a vaccinated child spread it throughout their preschool as well as to an infant in their family. This children's parents didn't realize that they had whooping cough and they sent them out into the world thinking he just had a runny nose. As the parent of unvaccinated kids, I immediately took my children to the doctor. They were tested for whooping cough and they were positive. We started early treatment. We stayed home. This meant that my children infected 0 of their peers and did not suffer from the classic whooping cough because we acted fast and responsibly. But the bigger point here is that there are anecdotal stories to support all sides of this discussion because nothing is one size fits all, not in education and not in health. Ultimately, the decision to vaccinate or not is a decision for parents to make. Your role should not impede on a parent's role to make the best possible choice for our own children. You don't know the individual children that you're making decisions for. So you shouldn't really have anything to do with their healthcare decisions. From what I witnessed in the meeting earlier, some of you are sadly misinformed when it comes to the health and safety of vaccines, but you're not alone in that. So thanks to carefully crafted PR, far too many people are misinformed on this topic, but thankfully it's easier now than ever before to dig into the history of vaccines and the safety of them, or lack thereof. Believe me, it's a disturbing lack of safety studies, and it doesn't take an expert to discover that. Vaccines absolutely cannot be compared to other pharmaceuticals when it comes to safety and testing and accountability. Simply the fact that vaccine manufacturers cannot be held liable.
Thank you for your call today, caller. Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. If you could please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
My name is Mark Ashley Price, and I'm from Highland Park, Michigan. Greetings. My name is Mark Ashley Price. I'm a former school board member of Highland Park. I would like to congratulate the new state superintendent, as I know he will do a good job. I also want to thank one of the state one of the state deputy state superintendents about giving me a follow-up call after I called in to the meeting in October and last month about the hard situation that the Highland Park School District is now in. My school board president also talked to one of the deputy superintendents about the Highland Park School District as well. Thank you so much to the Michigan State Board of Education for giving attention to the Highland Park School District. It means a lot to the children of Highland Park, and it means a lot to me personally. Thank you so much, and may God bless a great state of Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you. If you please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
I'm Dr. James Lyons Weiler calling from St. Clair Shores, Michigan. President Dr. Pamela Pugh and members of the Michigan State Board of Education. It's widely known and discussed in the peer-reviewed literature that the pertussis component of the Tdap vaccine has failed. That means that, like COVID-19 vaccines, pertussis vaccines can prevent symptomatic infection, but do not prevent transmission. Therefore, the argument against exemptions is not supported by concern over pertussis. Most cases of pertussis of concern are in the very young. They're mostly treatable, and family members are not the primary source of infection. Healthcare workers, on the other hand, are constantly exposed to pertussis and are vaccinated, but are vaccinated but not immunized every 10 years. Measles is treatable with 2 high doses of vitamin A per the World Health Organization protocol. You can find that on the web. The CDC used to list the World Health Organization protocol. So I'd like to know what's being done to make sure all school nurses know that measles is treatable by 2 high doses of vitamin A, and proper hydration. The U.S. Code of Federal Regulations. All long-term safety, vaccine safety is based on data from community vaccination. CDC and HHS use pharmacovigilance systems like VAERS and the Vaccine Safety Data Link to perform long-term vaccine safety studies. This is by any definition human subjects research. The U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, including 45 CFR 46, the Common Rule, and others governing federal requirements of informed consent, require free, prior, and informed consent for inclusion in human subjects research. And parents are afforded by those rules to provide or decline informed permission for children in all areas of human subject research. Every family of every child vaccinated under mandates without exemptions are enrolling their child in long-term vaccine safety human subject research. The U.S. Code of Federal Regulations specifically forbids coercion of any kind, including denial of services or denial of rights and privileges to anyone being enrolled in human subject research. Penalties for violation of 45 CFR 46 and related federal human subjects protections are not symbolic. They include loss of all federal research funding, suspension and termination of approved research, institutional sanctions, disciplinary action against investigators, and, as repeatedly affirmed by OHRP, civil liability in federal court for failure to obtain valid informed consent. When violations rise to willful misconduct, additional exposures include criminal penalties under 18 U.S.C. 1001 and 1035 for false statements and falsification of consent and protocol documentations, alongside state-level tort liability for negligence, battery, and breach of
Thank you for your
fiduciary
comment
duty.
today, caller.
It's not been 3 minutes yet.
The timer just went off. It was 3 minutes. Thank you for your call today. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. If you please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Patricia Neuenschwander. I'm from White Lake, Michigan. As a pediatric nurse practitioner, I am extremely disappointed to hear the state of Michigan will no longer use the CDC for vaccine recommendations, but will turn to private clubs that are funded in part by the industry who makes and sells vaccines. Medical providers need to take responsibility for the interventions that they recommend. The practice of just following orders from someone else needs to end. All vaccines should be shared clinical decision-making after informed consent. If medical providers don't feel comfortable giving informed consent and making recommendations on the benefits and risks of vaccines, then they should not offer them. No more free passes. Parents have the right to say no to medical interventions that carry a risk, and they have that right without being coerced, threatened, or kicked out of a medical practice. This topic has become political, and it needs to stop. Our children deserve better. Put liability back on the manufacturers and medical providers if these products are so safe, and stop all the fighting about how safe or unsafe they are. Parents deserve a choice, and they deserve informed consent. I do not want to see any laws or restrictions being put on children to obtain an education based on their medical status. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. If you'd please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Okay, this is Sarah Demick. I'm calling from Shelby Township, Michigan. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm a parent of 3 school-age children here in Michigan, and I just wanted to call and voice my concerns about the proposed bill package, specifically the pieces that include codifying the current health department rule, requiring parents to go to the health department for their waivers, and mandate that individual school vaccination rates be publicly posted. Regarding the waiver process, we've had this waiver since 2015. Parents have been required to schedule an appointment at the local health department. The rule has already created significant difficulties for countless families. As a parent of 3 children, I can speak to the time disruption and logistical challenges of arranging these appointments, especially for families that are juggling work schedules, childcare, transportation, or any health issues.
The current rule is already restrictive and families are currently following it. Codifying it into law at this point doesn't serve a practical purpose other than to make an already burdensome process even more rigid and permanent. It also unnecessarily elevates a departmental rule into statute without evidence that doing so improves community health outcomes. Second, the proposal to publicly post vaccination rates at each school raises privacy concerns. When you publish small-scale data, especially in smaller districts or classrooms, you risk unintentionally identifying individual students or families. Even when names aren't listed, communities can often infer who is or who is not vaccinated. Health information is supposed to be private, and families deserve protection from community pressure, stigma, and discrimination. Requiring schools to publicly post sensitive health-related data does not protect privacy, it undermines it. Parents in Michigan already have a legal right to make medical decisions for their children. These proposals move us further away from the principle of informed consent and closer towards coercion through administrative and social pressure. That's not how you build trust or improve public health. We all want healthy children and thriving schools, but the way to achieve that is through education, partnership, and respect for parental authority, not through increased barriers and public disclosure of private health choices. So I just wanted to urge you guys to consider what ramifications these additions could potentially cause to the already declining rates of public school children as parents continue to seek alternatives for their education. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you. If you'd please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
My name is Stephen Sisson. I'm calling from Otsego, Michigan. Good afternoon. The fact that you're considering nullifying personal autonomy in regards to student vaccination strongly suggests one of two motives: willful ignorance of the true impact of childhood vaccinations or the influence of the very powerful pharmaceutical lobby on every aspect of socio, political, and educational life in Michigan. The recently surfaced Henry Ford childhood vaccination study presents one of the very, very few studies in which researchers were tasked to study the vaccinated versus unvaccinated control group. The results of that study forcefully demonstrate why vaccinated versus unvaccinated studies are not performed by the medical industrial complex. When they are performed, they are buried, blacklisted, and maligned by the pharmaceutically funded media because they may claim the fact that children are profit centers to be exploited, not patients to be healed. The impact of childhood vaccinations on short and long-term chronic health studies recently read into congressional records reports that vaccination exposure was associated with about 2.5-fold increased hazard of developing a chronic health condition compared with no vaccination. The findings: in round numbers, vaccinated children were shown to be over 400% more likely to have asthma and 600% more likely to have an acute asthma attack, 600% more likely to have chronic ear infections, 600% more likely to have an autoimmune disorder, 800% more likely to have an anaphylactic event. Overall, the authors report a 250% increase in the risk of developing a chronic health condition in children who receive childhood vaccinations when compared to children who remain unvaccinated. This is consistent with other vaccinated versus unvaccinated comparator studies, both those that Big Pharma and the industrial medical complex have forced into retraction and those that remain. Members of the board, you're being asked to take a position on school vaccination policy at a time when trust in public institutions, especially the State Board of Education, is fragile, if not broken. Whatever your personal views on vaccines, your first duty here is not to dictate a single medical choice for every family, but to protect the principles of informed consent, educational access, and respect for legitimate disagreement. Michigan already has a stringent framework. Families must provide proof of vaccination, a medical exemption, or a certified non-medical waiver obtained through mandatory education at the local health department. It is a system that recognizes both public health goals and the fundamental right of parents to make medical decisions for their children. Ratcheting this further crosses the line from public health to coercion. We're not voting on
Thank
whether
you,
vaccines
caller,
are
for
good
your
or
call
bad.
today. Thank you. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. If you could please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Tasha Shergan from Clarkston, Michigan. You wonder why the waiver rates are on the rise. The same narrative is continued to be pushed, safe and effective. But how could it be? We have an entire industry, the vaccine industry, that's protected from liability since 1986. And what else was supposed to happen since the 1986 Act? Biannual safety studies, where are they? They don't exist. Then we have the fact that none of our routine injected childhood vaccines have ever had a placebo control licensure. None of them. Let me repeat that again. None of our routine injected childhood vaccines have ever had a placebo controlled licensure. Safety has not been assessed. Controls are critical for baseline safety. The current childhood schedule, no controls, no placebo, using previous vaccines or a non-inert injection as the control is junk science. Instead of spending so much time spewing propaganda and repeating the narrative, I would encourage these medical professionals to dig a little deeper, see what's really happening. The health of our children depends on it. I implore you to maintain exemptions, follow the law, and not push rules that conflict with the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, caller. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Thank you. If you please state your name
Yes.
and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Frank Bartlow, and I'm calling from Garden City, Michigan. I wanted to comment on health matters. I do not have a child in school now, but I can tell you I went to school, I went to college at University of Michigan. And if I had a vaccine mandate, I would not go now if I wanted to go to school, because all these mandates are based on absolutely false information. Poliomyelitis is not an infectious disease. The stats indicate that vaccines did not bring about the reduction of childhood illnesses. That certainly doesn't explain why typhoid and scarlet fever, which were two of the biggest killers, typhoid was the biggest 19th century killer, which never had successful vaccination programs, were eradicated just as surely as measles or any of the others. And measles had been reduced by 99% before the vaccine even came out. It was on its way out. It had become a very mild disease. I come from a generation in which we had about a dozen vaccines, and chronic illnesses among young people were virtually unheard of. Now, half of the young people have chronic illnesses, and we cannot rule out the 70-some vaccines they get prior to entering college as a possible contributing cause, because each of those vaccines contain poisons. And though I don't have a horse in the race, my horse in the race is truth and justice and public health. And it just breaks my heart to see so many sick kids now when Americans are more vaccinated by far than ever.
Are you still there, caller?
What was that?
Are you all done?
I am. Yep, that's what I had to say. We have to consider both sides of this, and trying to scapegoat unvaccinated people based on a false presumption, to me, is absurd, and we need to get with it. The truth's not going away. As people get sicker and sicker, young people, the truth ain't going away until we really look at the causes and allow people to make their own choices, because parents who've looked into this are the most informed people, far more informed than their doctor.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Hello, caller. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. If you'd please state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes.
My name is Frank Baupel. I'm calling from Grand Rapids. and I would like to talk about the vaccine drop-off in the rates, and I would suggest that this is due to people not really trusting public officials as much as they used to because of all the mandates, and to just enact more mandates to try to force more compliance, I think would backfire, and I hope that's not the route that you take. The other thing that I would like you to consider is that most of the so-called infectious diseases that are going around in schools are, the vaccine actually does not prevent transmission. So even if people were to vaccinate more, that would not prevent that even a vaccinated person can still transmit. So the forcing somebody to take a vaccine to protect somebody else, that should not be what you would want to do, I would hope. So that's my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike, are there any other callers who have pre-registered for public comment today?
Those are all the registered callers.
Thank you so much. This concludes public participation.
Thank you, Ms. Evans and Mike. Next on the agenda, we have approval of the minutes of the regular committee meeting of the whole. May I entertain a motion, Dr. Pritchett, to approve? Second, Ms. Lipton. Any discussion, Mr. McMillan?
I guess there's some inaccuracy regarding Section 10, reported the State Board President. It says no report was given, but Dr. Pugh emphasized the importance of parental rights in education and affirmed that parents, school districts can opt out, and they are opt-outable standards if they choose. Well, the health standards are not opt-out for parents, nor, so it would seem that there needs to be clarification if the intent was to opt out of sex education, that should be included in these minutes, because currently it's false.
Ms. Schneider?
I would support that change. And
I mean, I guess, I don't know if there would be an openness to
can you move
an
to
amendment.
amend
I
it?
mean, I'd like to make an amendment that, or a motion, I'm sorry, to amend the minutes to say, affirm that parents in school districts can opt out of sex education, and that they are opt-outable sex education standards if they choose. Kind of a strange wording to start with, but.
Education standards in Michigan.
You've got that?
I think that would be factual. I don't know.
So you're asking for the minutes to read instead of health standards that it say sex ed standards?
It doesn't say health standards, it just says that they can opt out and they are opt-outable standards if they choose. It doesn't, I mean, or, yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be clarification.
I wouldn't
You
support
proposed
it.
amendment, right?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second for the amendment?
I wouldn't support it written that way because we don't
Support?
have sex education standards
Okay.
in Michigan.
So you support it?
I don't support saying we have sex education standards in
Okay,
Michigan.
so do we have any support for, okay, then the motion fails.
No, well, could you reword it is the question I have.
I don't know.
We don't have sex education standards in Michigan. We have sex education, and it's governed by sex education law, and then we have health education guidelines governed by MMC curriculum, which are two different things. So that's really what's inaccurate about the minutes.
I see, because
So that motion failed, but you could.
yeah, I'll remove it because, yeah, they actually, during testimony, they said that there are no sex education standards. So I guess districts can opt out of sex education if they choose. And parents and school districts can opt out of sex education if they choose.
So that's your amendment?
That would be the
motion.
amendment.
Is there a second for that?
I
Ms.
support
Schneider, is there any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. Oh, Mr. Bullock, discussion. On the amendment.
Well, my comment is pretty much what Ms. Snyder first alluded to, is we approved healthcare standards. We didn't approve anything about sexual standards, sexual education. So if there is the statement could be, you have the option to opt out of the current healthcare standard, which is what we're saying, versus any reference to sexual education would be more of a clarity for what Mr. McMillan is alluding.
Are you, some more discussion, Ms. Lipton, on the amendment?
This is, through the chair, just a procedural question. I think that, I'm not a expert on Robert's Rules of Order, but my understanding is that the minutes of any meeting are an attempt to capture what was said. And number one, I'm not sure that you can amend meeting minutes. I mean, I'm just not sure that an amendment based on the president's report
Voted up or down?
makes sense.
Let me just,
I just, I don't,
Okay.
I think the president's report would speak for itself.
Okay,
But-
so wait, Mr. McMillan.
during the approval
I
process.
would just say that the minutes are as presented. If they are false, then we should correct them before we approve them. But I don't, to member Bullock, I think he said that we cannot, that districts and parents can opt out of health standards.
The healthcare
But they
standards.
can't.
But they can, and
They can't.
quit saying that the statement's false. You would like to provide
The logic
another
does
word to
suggest
add
that.
clarity, but they are not false.
Well, okay, I mean, I would just say that they can't opt out because they have to have it for graduation. So, I mean, so you can't opt out of the healthcare standard, the health standards.
Sue, go ahead.
Comment, please? My hand's been up.
Okay, hold on 1 second, Dr. Carnell.
So they can opt out of standard, they can opt out of what's being taught in class. Health education is a required course. What's taught in health ed is up to the local district, and a parent can opt out of what is taught in those classes.
So
it's not a correction.
may I speak?
Yes, Ms. Snyder.
Thank you. So statute's very clear that the Department of Education is to develop guidelines and that districts are to align with. That is the statutory verbiage as it relates to health education. And the health education is very much defined. We talked about this last month. So if we are going to infuse sex education, which a parent should be able to opt out of it, into the health education guidelines that the department has statutory authority to develop, not standards, then what we're suggesting then is a health education class should be skipped by, students by including them. Anyhow, we're not, here's the reality.
Can I just add about the minutes? The way that we do the minutes, we review the video to capture what was said at the table.
And
so
thank
what
you.
is in the minutes is what
That's
was
what I-
said at the table.
Here's what I would love to say about the minutes. And this is, Liz, something you've honestly rolled your eyes at me about in terms of what is the vote on pass here with these minutes. My pass vote is historically at this table and in legislative committee meetings, we've had incredible dysfunction, and I haven't been able to FOIA the recorded video of a meeting that I'm a member of being a part of. So when I pass, it's because I say, we have an OMA law that suggests that the video of a meeting is extremely important. It really is the official sort of modern way of keeping minutes. Really what should go into minutes at this point in time is simply the vote, not one person's interpretation of what's happening, because the public has access via OMA to our meetings, right? So they can look at the agenda, they can look at the public video, and they can look at the vote. And they can make, a determination through their own critical thinking. That's what we should trust them to do. If we have to go back over correcting minutes every month, it's a waste of everybody's time. That's really my pass vote every single month, because there has been historical conflict around exactly what's happening here at the table and do we have access to it. We should correct this because this is a significant error in what happened last month and what's actual.
Okay, well, yes, Dr. Pugh.
Let me help here. Those were my words. I used those words. I did not give a report. As we typically do, well, as we all know happened, we had quite a bit of public comment, and one of the terms that was used during public comment was opt-outable. I wrote that down, and I'm clear on what I said, so I don't need anyone, not Tom, not Nikki, putting words in my mouth. So I'm good with where we are. We can move on.
Ms. Tilley?
Just wanted to give a point of clarity. Our meetings are public and they are on YouTube. So,
Yeah, there's
You
no
shouldn't
need.
have to, correct?
Yeah, but you don't have to because they're on YouTube.
That
It's public.
experience.
I Google the meetings when I want to review, and so
Do
they
you
are
find
on
legislative
YouTube.
and agenda committee meetings, which are OMA?
Our
All right,
meetings,
Miss
our
Tilly
state
has the
board
floor
meetings.
right now, please.
Our state board meetings are public.
All right, I mean, generally, the minutes should just be
Easy-
a
easy to
correction of the
find.
accuracy. Obviously, I wasn't here, it's on video. I'm just gonna take an up or down vote on the meetings of the whole and the meetings of the
We have a
committee.
motion for
Or
the
motion.
amendment,
Or the
so we have to
amendment,
do that
sorry,
vote
on the
first.
amendment first. So we'll go with that, Ms. Evans, sorry, on the amendment.
What, did he get a second on that?
Yes.
He did, Ms. Schneider did.
Yep. Bullock?
No.
Lipton? McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett? Pugh? Robinson? Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly? Motion fails.
All right, so now we'll move to any further discussion on the overall minutes.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. McMillan?
First of all, we can correct minutes. We've done in the past. So if the minutes as presented are incorrect, we've corrected them the following month, as a matter of fact. I, would suggest we at least table this because I think it is important. Right now, as the minutes stand, the president's on record saying you can opt out of healthcare standards, which Dr. Carnell said that parents can, but she said that the districts have to have an health class. So, I mean, whatever. If you guys want to have, clearly incorrect minutes, that's fine. Go ahead.
Any further comment? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, Ms. Evans.
Bullock?
On the overall minutes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Of course not.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh? Robinson? Snyder?
Pass.
And Tilly.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have item F, approval of the minutes of the Legislative Committee of December 4th. Do we have someone to, Dr. Pritchett? Thank you. Second, Ms. Lipton. Any discussion on those minutes? All right, seeing none, Ms.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
I skipped, I'm sorry. McMillan?
No.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh? Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Pass.
And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to discussion, presentation. The following agenda items: a presentation on foster care updates. Today's presentation will feature the collaborative efforts between the Michigan Department of Education, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Park West Foundation to address policy gaps in support of youth experiencing foster care, as well as the actions of the agencies have taken as a result of the collaborative efforts. Let's welcome Dr. Delsa Chapman, Deputy Superintendent, Division of Assessment, School Improvement and System Support, Ms. Kathleen Hakeney, Consultant, Office of Educational Supports, Ms. Rachel Willis, Director, Bureau of Out-of-Home Services, Children's Services Administration, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Ms. Sarah Goad, Manager, Older Youth and Education Program Office, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Ms. Saba Gabry, Program Director, College and Career Empowering Foster Youth through Technology Advisor, Park West Foundation. And we are pleased to also welcome students Danella, Janaya, and Dylan. Thank you for being here. Dr. Chapman, it's all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Maleko, and good afternoon, Board. We are excited to share updates on efforts to support students experiencing foster care that have been achieved through the collaboration of MDE, MDHHS, and Park West Foundation. Our collaborative was formed to center youth voice in education policy, improve outcomes for foster youth, and build stronger systems through partnership. We're not just identifying problems. We are happy to report today that we are working toward real solutions that can be implemented and supported by all stakeholders. Being driven by purpose, as noted here on the screen, the collaboration strives to be centered on youth voice with a focus on policy and best practices through discussion to improve educational outcomes for youth while strengthening interagency collaboration and accountability that will result in implementation of youth-identified solutions. We will now expound on how the collaborative is addressing the focus areas.
We know, good afternoon, my name is Kathleen Haney. We know that youth voice is central to this work. We also understand that asking our youth to repeatedly share personal stories can be re-traumatizing. We are shifting toward honoring their input by focusing on solutions and suggestions they have identified through their input and through their participation. We intend to continue the collaboration with youth input as steps for implementation are identified according to our policy and legislation. Next slide. Data exchange between agencies is essential to ensure a comprehensive approach for maximizing support for youth experiencing foster care. All personally identifiable information is required to be shared according to the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, as well as following the current data sharing agreement between MDE, the Center for Education and Performance Information, or CEPI, and the MDHHS. Often, there is confusion about who holds educational decision-making rights for our foster youth. Federal law, both ESSA and IDA and others, indicate that the role of education decision maker remains with the biological parent unless documented attempts have been made to contact them and include them with those decisions, and those attempts are then unsuccessful. Then, responsibility shifts to the assigned foster parent or parents. If the foster parent is unable or unwilling to fulfill that role, or if the youth becomes a permanent ward of the state, it may be necessary to appoint a surrogate parent according to the recently adopted State Board of Education appointment of a surrogate parent for special education and early intervention services guidance document. There are set timelines, requirements, and regular court reviews built into the foster care case management system. As cases progress through the court system, sometimes legal parents for education changes. If that happens, it is then necessary for MDHHS case managers to inform schools as to the current status of the case regarding custody to ensure all parties are aware of who holds the education rights for youth. MDE and MDHHS continue to train local education agencies, case managers, and jurists around the need for increased communication for efficient and effective supports for our youth. Delays in school record transfers can cause students to repeat grades as well as credit loss at the high school level. Tools from CEPI, including the Educational Entity Master, Michigan Student Data System, Teacher Student Data Link, are examples, as well as the My School data and updated forms like the DHS 942. They are utilized, but gaps remain. Legislative support is needed to improve the current system, MCL 380-1135 as referenced. Efforts continue to address systemic changes, including building a comprehensive child welfare information system, or CWIS, integrating the Michigan Merit Curriculum and surrogate parent guidance into trainings. These are foundational shifts that will have lasting impact and remain an ongoing need. The Office of Educational Supports has begun implementation of Public Acts 10, 11, and 23 of 2024 as of school year 25-26. As noted, the system-wide inclusion of youth experiencing foster care and their education decision makers in conversations remains a priority in ensuring youth have full access to the Michigan Merit Curriculum. This work would not be possible without strong collaboration between MDE, MDHHS, and Park West. Work continues to align policies, training, and communication. A unified approach to supporting youth experiencing foster care across agencies and partners is critical and necessary. And now, I would like to hand the presentation over to our partner, Ms. Saba Gabrai, Program Director of Park West Foundation.
Thank you for having us, Superintendent, board members. It's great to be back with you guys again. So Park West Foundation is guided, I don't know if you can hear me. Park West Foundation is guided by the voices and experiences of students in foster care who advocate for themselves. And their peers through empowering foster youth through technology, just like Janaya here today with us, and also Donella, so I'll turn it over. Go ahead, Janaya.
Thank you for having us. Oh, Thank you for having us. My name is Janaya Broden, and I'm an advocate with Park West Foundation, empowering foster youth through technology, FY Tech. I entered foster care in summer 2023 while my parents started a difficult process to try and get my three brothers and I back at home. I started my first year of high school in foster care. In a short period, all of our grades started to suffer as the only people interested in our academic success, our parents, were not in our lives to support us for 2 years. In fact, they were not aware that they could still be involved in our schooling. I somehow completed my 9th grade year, and I could not remember a time when my grades looked so bad. In the beginning of my second semester in the 10th grade, my school principal found out I had an issue with a classmate, and without getting my side of the story, he told me, the dean of students, to tell my foster parent to make the very day my last, since my grades were also already bad. No meeting was held to move me to a different school or a hearing to suspend me from school. Just like that, I sat at home for almost 2 months, struggling to enroll in a different school. My workers were changing at the time and were focused on the other things that were communication. There was a communication breakdown with everyone involved. Even though I was 16, I registered for school myself and put down my parents' information for contact because it made sense to me. Even though my foster parents felt my parents should not have any say at all about my education. Then I asked my parents to go to the school and submit all required documents to complete my registration and finally start back attending school. It wasn't until I started advocating with Park West Foundation FY Tech that I learned my mother was still the education rights holder for me, even though I was not in her physical custody. I know now students in foster care have a right to stay in their school of origin. But without the constant protection and support from empowered legal parents, system and policies designed to support students just don't work. I also know now foster youth are supposed to enroll in a new school immediately with or without records, while school records for students in foster care are supposed to be requested and released immediately. Due to the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015, we're here today to urge everyone's support to ensure Michigan implements these protections for all students experiencing foster care like me. I'm back with my parents now, and my grades have improved, but I'm still making up credits from 10th grade.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donella Anderson. FY Tech advocates like Janaea and myself have been part of a historic youth center collaboration with MDE and MDHHS. As you can see today, we've made real progress in creating solutions that help remove barriers to graduation for students in foster care. Still, this work can go even farther. We need stronger provisions that ensure schools receive accurate and updated legal parent information and immediate transfer of school records so students don't fall behind when they move. Right now, foster youth graduate at a rate of 39% compared to 82% of their peers. We still have a long way to go. It's important to remember students in foster care are under state protection through no fault of their own due to neglect or abuse they experience. Their lives are supported by a complex team, caseworkers, judges, attorneys, foster parents, family, and caring adults who work together to stabilize the children and reunify them with family whenever possible. But because the system is so complex and sensitive, schools often weren't informed about the unique needs of children in foster care. That began to change with the 2008 Fostering Connections Act and the 2015 Every Student Succeeds Act, which required states to close these gaps. ESSA makes both MDHHS and MDE jointly responsible for ensuring school stabilities for students in foster care. Since 2022, we've made tremendous strides, starting with the State Board of Education resolution on December 13, 2022. Thank you.
Yes, progress is being made, and the Department of Health and Human Services here with us today has also updated several policies, which we're really excited about, and invested in this effort. While we jointly made the Public Acts of 10, 11, and 23 a reality, moving closer to improved school stability and closed system support for students in foster care, which is wonderful. So as we work with the legislature to address the systemic legal parent identification for schools, it's also critical to understand why there must be an ongoing urgency to legislate the 2015 ESSA requirements to immediately transfer the school records for students in foster care as next steps. Timely records transfer is essential again for educational stability and is the single greatest predictor of long-term success for youth in foster care. Delays in transferring transcripts, IEPs, and of course, histories lead to lost instructional time, inappropriate class placements, and also repeated coursework, all of which compound trauma and widen the achievement gaps. Immediate record transfer ensures the children can enroll and participate in school without interruption, giving them continuity at a moment when every other part of their life may be unstable. It also reduces administrative burden on both schools and child welfare agencies by creating a clear and predictable process. So by fully implementing ESSA's requirement, Michigan would be safeguarding vulnerable students' rights to an uninterrupted education and promoting better academic and life outcomes statewide. And now over to MDHHS.
Thank you so much to Saba, Danelle, and Janaya, and to our partners at MDE for the work that we've been doing in advancing, improving outcomes for youth in foster care. My name is Rachel Willis, and I'm the Bureau Director for Out-of-Home Services and the Children's Services Administration. And today we would like to provide an update on several projects that have either been completed or in development related to that goal of improving education outcomes for youth in foster care. So our first item that was updated is the DHS 942, or School Notification and Education Records Release. This document was updated with consultation with MDE, foster care staff, education points of contact, and our education foster care work group, which includes Park West, and youth. When foster care staff complete the 942, they should list who holds the education rights for the child based on their ward status. Additionally, MDHHS policy requires that the 942 be sent to the LEAs, assigned foster care liaison, and the LEAs then determine how that information is distributed amongst the schools. In addition to updating our form, we also released communication that was intentional to support the importance of this work being updated, and this information was provided to our private and public caseworkers. This communication issuance was released in October of 2025 and included information on the following areas. We updated the education best interest determination, which outlines that children have the right to remain in their school of origin, even when placed outside of their district, whenever feasible and found in their best interest. Foster care staff must initiate a best interest determination and include the school determination factors when deciding where a child will attend school. We also provided updates around and reminders regarding transportation, as well as noting the changes that were made in the DHS 942, as well as updating and providing additional information regarding education right holders and surrogate parents. As a reminder, biological parents hold education rights if the child is a temporary ward, and MDHHS or their private agency or child care and institution staff cannot sign as the parent for education right purposes. In addition to updating both the policy and the communication, both the communication and the document, we updated our policy. So MDHS also updated policy to solidify our expectations of our caseworkers. Those updates include solidifying information around surrogate parents, the expectations for signing for special education purposes, and also define additional costs regarding when schools identify needs for costs related to transportation. Next, I will turn it over to Sarah Goad.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Goad. I am the manager for foster care, older youth, and education program office at MDHHS. So MDHHS contracts with approximately 41 private child placing institutions, or CCIs. In fiscal year 25, CCI contracts were updated to explicitly outline the requirements for CCIs to provide educational programming that meets the Michigan Merit Curriculum. MDHHS currently has 2 statewide educational analysts, and these analysts work with youth who are in residential treatment programs. They assist with record transfer when youth enter and leave CCIs. They attend IEPs. They monitor progress of youth while placed in CCIs, including credit attainment and grades. And they provide technical assistance to CCI staff and local school districts. MDHHS and MDE are also partnering to provide assistance to contracted child placing institutions and local school districts to help strengthen those relationships. MDHHS is in the development process of creating and launching a new comprehensive child welfare information system, or CWIS, as a replacement to our MySACWIS system. It's anticipated that this new program will be released and live in 2028. As part of the system enhancements, MDHHS anticipates additional capability to track education, including school moves, academic achievement, special education, and graduation information. MDE and lived experts have been involved in discussions thus far, and we are still in the initial phases of developing the new system. MDHHS has contracted with a vendor, Hop Skip Drive, to provide transportation support for children in foster care in Southeast Michigan in order to retain enrollment in their school of origin by providing transportation supports when a youth moves outside of their district. Hop Skip Drive functions with an Uber-like application that allows staff and caregivers to see real-time updates of rides. It allows caregivers to update ride information, such as canceling when a child is sick or changing times for things like half days. During the 2024-25 academic school year, there were 7,104 completed school trips, and approximately 88 children and youth received transportation to help them remain in their school of origin with this contract. The contractor has an extensive vetting and training process for drivers, including information on trauma-informed care and mandated reporting. And our local office staff have provided positive feedback regarding the vendor and the services thus far. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Dr. Chapman.
Thank you, Rachel and Sarah. Regarding systems level solutions and support, here you see the official guidance released to the field by MDE on May 1st of this year. The document, titled Michigan Education Resource Guide for Understanding and Implementing Stability for High School Youth Experiencing Foster Care, assists local education agencies in providing the supports to high school foster care youth while navigating learning within Michigan. The guidance is user-friendly for all stakeholders, including the youth themselves. In addition to the guidance document, MDE has committed to an annual notification to local education agencies that will likely occur not only once per school year, but quarterly, to remind them of both state and federal requirements regarding the education and support of students experiencing foster care. The first issuance of this reminding letter, or memo, occurred on October 9th of 2025. It included not only what is required at the local level, but also includes recommendations for meeting those requirements by way of providing strategies, protocols, and processes that can be immediately implemented at the local education agency level. Our next steps will include the continuation of this great collaboration between MDE, MDHHS, and Park West Foundation. We will continue to collaborate to work toward fully addressing the focus areas that were shared with you today, and those focus areas were developed by collaboration amongst us. To do so yields an opportunity, yes, to break barriers towards graduation while also increasing gains in services and support of Michigan youth experiencing foster care. Specifically, we will be intentional with strengthening our cross-agency coordination to fully implement Public Act 11 of 2024, while also implementing system-level solutions as shared today, including, but not limited to, the Comprehensive Child Welfare Information System as shared and noted by our partners at MDHHS today. And with that, we say thank you for this opportunity. Dr. Maleko, back to you.
Thank you very much for the quality presentation. The students did awesome. You all did great. And we're so, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for the high quality presentation. You know, the students did great, and all of you, and I appreciate your advocacy. Does any board members have questions or comments? Senator Bullock.
Presentation. Oh, sorry. Yeah, before the intro.
Well, I just did it too, so.
Yeah, great presentation. I have a question of curiosity. Knowing, because the young lady stated one of her issues was the 5-day rule. So how are we informing the foster care agencies and the school system about, or how are we enforcing the 5-day enrollment rule? Because even when you become the PA ward, you got 5 days to get placement. But even if the school removes me, it's in my understanding that they have 5 days to enroll you, pass your information. And so how are we educating and informing the people of the system that should be in charge of this stuff?
That's a great question, and thank you, Senator Bullock. As shared, we will continue to be more forthright and intentional with the reminding letters and memos. We are hoping that at the local level, it is clear that each educational agency should have a foster care liaison inside and on place. That would be the individual that should be held accountable for making sure that they are participating in trainings and clearly understands the protocols and procedures when it comes to addressing the timely placement and transfer of records of Michigan students. Rachel or Sarah, would you like to add anything else to that?
She good.
Okay. Okay.
Add something to that. I think the identification of parents, the legal parents for education, is going to help improve that because, like in her case, the foster parent did not identify her as a foster student in the school. So there is something shared with the schools, but access to that information is not privy to all liaisons, so they don't really know how to identify that student. So they weren't able to put in place some of the
So Sala, I
rules.
mean, for me, because I haven't worked in the field in such a long time, she was a temporary ward.
Correct.
What happens if I'm a permanent ward? I'm a PA 150, whatever. How does the same process, parents still have
Same.
first rights?
No, somebody's acting as a parent legally,
Right,
according to the
that's okay,
court.
so yeah.
It doesn't have to be biological parents.
So once they get the caseworker, that person is supposed to be informing or making sure that the placement, right? Or
Yeah, that's what we're working towards.
okay, all right.
So there's something missing that needs to be addressed
All right.
because in her case, the person who had the right did not know they had the rights.
All right.
But there needs to be a consistency, and that's what the Department of Education also identified. And efforts have been made with the Department of Health and Human Services to update the forms, but it's not capturing everyone.
That was a curiosity of my second part. Even though the parent, well, I mean, I guess the school didn't know, so they didn't. Yeah. All right.
If I may, that's what updating the 942 is intended to capture, so it explicitly outlines who's the educational right holder for that child and their ward status. So that's something that we're hoping increases that. Correct.
That way
But it's bad how they treated it. They thought she was a regular student. Didn't sound right.
There were definitely a lot of things missed, but the coordination, the constant coordination and collaboration is what's needed.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan.
Well, first, during the interview process for state superintendent, I asked every one of them, including Dr. Maleko, that we need this solved, and he committed to solving it. So I appreciate the continued movement, handoff to keep moving on this situation as far as records go, and I'm sure there's other areas that need to be solved. But from what okay, so I'm trying to understand exactly. So who's accountable? What's the new system? As I understand it now, based on what we're being told, the changes are going to be, eventually in 2028, there's supposed to be a really good system, I guess. I mean, but in the interim, what we're hoping is that some memos that go to schools will help, and then the MDHHS office, the person will be accountable somehow. I mean, so I don't know if there wasn't accountability before, and I don't know what accountable means. So they get demoted, fired? How do they, if they don't do their job well and kids get in a situation like we heard today, that there's no, I don't know, I guess. But I mean, is that what we're just hoping, is that they'll be really good in the office, at the MDHHS offices, and that these memos will help at the school level, I guess? And maybe to parents or the foster parents, and then maybe a system's coming in 3 years?
Sure. So I appreciate the question. There's a coordinated effort that's going on. So it's sort of a two-pronged approach. One is the responsibility of the department when children are in the public welfare system. So if a child becomes either a temporary or permanent ward of the department, then we have responsibilities as far as what we have to track and issue information around. So we are making sure that 942 is provided to schools, that we are updating that child's education records. And we have a process internally within the department where every quarter we're looking at updates for the child. And it's a comprehensive update for the child, and one of those components includes their education performance. What we're coordinating with the Department of Education is the timeliness of the record transfer. So we are responsible from the Department of Health and Human Services side for that case management, that direct oversight of the well-being of the child, and turning in the documentation. Where we are still realizing that gap is even when the child's enrolled, if that sending school does not send the records timely, or if the receiving school doesn't interpret the records in a way that maintains that child's status, that's where we're seeing the gap.
So I don't know, I don't know the system very well, obviously, but is it really more harmful to the kids that are like in high school? And so I'm just thinking a 6-year-old may not, my thought was some kind of a phone number that the kid, that this child could have gotten, or just said, here's the ombudsman, here's the person. I couldn't ask that of a 5-year-old to do that. But if you're telling me that the real crisis in this situation is, this young lady was just having the time of her life trying to or having a difficult time of her life trying to figure this out. I mean, could they, each one of them, just get a phone number for the, here's an ombudsman, or here is the person that we are going to make sure. And I know there's 10,000 kids in the system. I don't know if that's about, I don't know how many of those are high schoolers or ones that are really hurt significantly by this issue, but, I don't know. I mean, is that a temporary or partially? I think that, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. And I don't know if I'm assuming there's been a lot of brainstorming, and, I really appreciate the work. I just, I'd love to give as many avenues as possible to try to solve this and somebody doesn't fall through the cracks.
So there is a legislative work being done to address that gap because there's two different departments that have to collaborate, and the situation is constantly changing. So we looked at other states, and there needs to be a system of communication if a parent loses their rights, or if a new surrogate has been appointed, or whatever the changes are, the worker can call the principal and let them know, and that way they are alerted as to who the person is, and then a written communication comes from the court to let them know who the new person is that's acting as the parent, and that way they're constantly aware of every child that's in foster care, because everyone has a guardian ad litem. So Representative Stephanie Young is developing some policies with us and everyone is willing to look at how this wording is going to work to address this gap that everyone has identified together. So everyone is aware that there is something missing that's not allowing for the dots to connect.
And one last thing, is there anywhere that students or or foster care parents can say, here's my horse, here's what happened? And just so that people understand, that these are the problems and that maybe, your work group can kind of get feedback like immediately. Because I would like to see something like this come back again, like in 6 months, or just to kind of see how things are going, because I think it's that important, but.
We do, if I may, we do have several points of access where youth and parents and anyone system involved can make sure that they're reaching our administration. What I would note is we do recognize that there's opportunities for us to share more with youth about what their rights are when they're in foster care. So we do have an updated document that is going out to all of our older youth about their rights in foster care, and their rights to education and rights to stay in their school of origin is explicitly called out in that document. And that document will also contain, who do I contact if I feel like I'm not receiving the information I need. So that is updated guidance that's going out. And we also, once a youth reaches the age of 14, they are required to do what are called semi-annual transition meetings, which are coordinated care meetings with their caseworker and their guardian ad litem and their care provider, where we are explicitly talking about their education rights and needs.
Ms. Schneider?
So, and in terms of the why with releasing information from the school that a foster student's leaving and then receiving it, which is what I just heard is kind of the biggest issue here. Is the why only the guardian ad litem discussion, or are there other whys that are important to address here in the problem-solving portion of this? Yeah, that's it for now.
Yes. Go ahead.
No, you can go.
I think the immediate transfer of records, specifically for foster youth, is so important because a parent might change. The surrogate might be a newly appointed person that doesn't know the child, and the student may have been in multiple schools. So the immediate transfer of records was explicitly mentioned in the 2015 ESSA. So that's another piece of the legislation that would allow foster youth to be prioritized so they can have their documentation of who they are transferred to that school, including IEPs, because they will get in trouble in a school without the school being aware that they have autism or different issues. So that's the second piece. There's multiple small pieces, including having a support person in the school as well. So, but we are working and making sure in the new legislation, legislation that's coming out, all these pieces are included.
You're very positive. I appreciate that take and approach. Why is it so difficult for them to immediately release it?
Oftentimes it gets forgotten because normally it's parents who are involved who might bring their own records and who also will constantly follow up, because we have an immediate enrollment piece that's been activated. But once the kids get in the school, it feels like everybody's relieved. They're in school.
Yeah.
So the record part gets forgotten. Now somebody else has to do that work, and they might be in school for 6 months in the wrong class, repeating classes, which is what many of them have talked about. And some of them give up because they don't want to redo classes they've already done.
Is there any mechanism by which a student can, I'm assuming the receiving school that has that student we're still waiting on your records. It just feels like, because I can pick up the phone and call a doctor and fill out a form pretty quickly and have them release my records to another facility within 24 hours, right? I can do that, right? I'm an adult. I understand that they don't have the capacity to do that, but if they've switched schools and they know, and they're in contact with the receiving school, how is it that they don't have the, right, if you will, to facilitate that themselves too, if the adults around them are not?
And I think lowering the age might also be good, because I think Alexis earlier talked about how the kids are asking for transcripts, but they can't get it because they're waiting for somebody who has the parent right to do it. So I think Kathleen wants to add something to it,
I was just going to add,
As I mentioned during the presentation, we have current legislation in place that allows or requires the receiving school or the enrolling school to request records, and there are timeframes that certainly don't meet immediate. And so those are the parameters in which we must function currently.
So you're petitioning to change the parameters.
Yes.
Specifically for foster youth. And maybe even to add the student as having rights to their records on some level so that they can initiate it if the adults don't, not just the time parameters, but who has a say, if you will.
And that does, just to, as Saba and our student guests have mentioned, we have two very big systems. We've omitted talking about SCAO, our state court administrative offices, and we do have some influence, if you will, at the table, as we have representatives from MDE, myself, and from MDHHS and Rossi to influence bench cards and make recommendations. But what happens on the bench is a suggestion from us. What the judge, or the jurist follows through with is their decision, and therefore we have to abide by those and communicate around that information.
So then at that point, it's the guardian ad litem within that decision that is the one, the only individual in the equation that can get the ball rolling and maintain keeping it rolling. And then they work within that time frame you're talking about currently.
That's a big statement and hope. Yes.
It's a joint, yes. It's joint. Everybody has to work together,
Okay.
and the court side has to also be a part of this collaboration.
Okay, understood.
Ms. Tilly?
I want to thank you all, everybody, and thank you, former Senator Bullock. I want to thank you all for the presentation. I want to thank the students or the youth for coming today, braving the weather, and making sure that your voices are heard at the table. It is so important. I want to thank Park West Saba for the work that you all do to empower students and teach them to advocate for themselves. And I also want to say I'm really thankful for the cohesion and the synergy in this meeting. This is definitely what I've been wanting, and I definitely see it today, and I'm grateful for it.
Thank you.
For everybody working and doing their part to make that happen. I do have some questions. I know that there's guidance that's been given. I was so shocked when we were advocating for the law to be changed, and speaking with educators and educating them on the issues that foster youth are facing with some of the issues that they're facing, and they had no clue what was going on. So beyond the guidance, what type of training and education is taking place for educators to make sure that they know how to deal with these issues and make sure that policies and procedures are being followed?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Tilly. So Kathleen Haney, our MDE foster care consultant, is very diligent in working with our local education agencies across the state. There are consistent trainings, webinars, workshops that are available. Kathleen, can you highlight that a little bit?
Certainly, and it's in collaboration. It is in partnership. Everything that MDE does is in partnership with the MDHHS. We train collaboratively, meaning we bring case managers in a local area alongside local education agency partners and foster care liaisons. We offer lunch and learns. We provide spring trainings. We review our policy and legislation. And then we also, anytime we are invited to a training session for a professional organization like Mesa, Go Mesa, any of the principal MSPA, I might be saying that wrong, forgive me, but anytime we are invited to the table to share information and understanding and be available to answer questions, we are there. and I haven't counted because I was corrected about a year or so ago, and it says, sounds like you're bragging a little bit. So there were no numbers involved with that, but I would say thousands and thousands of people are present with us. Um, and we are diligent in our communication across both sides. I can say, even with policies that MDHHS has have reviewed and updated recently, was in collaboration with the Department of Ed, along with our surrogate parent document that was adopted by the board just a few years ago. Those are all exciting pieces. In fact, we've been recognized by the United States Department of Ed for being in such a collaborative relationship and space for these pieces. So with the synergy, as you've mentioned, I believe that we have the opportunity to really make some big strides and hopefully with our legislative partners get some things over the finish line to continue supporting our youth experiencing foster care in their futures.
Have there been any modifications to the training since the collaboration has been formed to better help them understand? Because, like I said, there's there's so many gaps on the local level from what we're doing here on the state level and what their understanding is on this issue.
So we modify every time we are presenting, we make tweaks to ensure that the information that we are sharing is reflective of the current work at the table. Um, as far as those gaps, that is the entire purpose of having foster care included within the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015, because that 2008 Fostering Connections, that was the first time that education appeared in foster care legislation. And over time, what was that, about 7 years, there hadn't been any change in academic achievement. So the federal government, between USAID and HHS, said, hey, we need to now start holding schools accountable. So those schools that accept a penny of federal funding are required to at least have a foster care liaison. So those schools that don't accept federal money, they don't have to comply. So if our youth are placed there, the department has little influence on what we can do to encourage them to support our youth. It's a handful, but it's just a note that I think is important to make at this time. So we make tweaks all the time in reflection of the work that we do.
Awesome. Um, the transportation piece, I think that is an important piece. I really like that and appreciate that, to make sure that they are going to the school of origin and they are being tracked. So we know that where our students are. Um, you mentioned a couple of tech updates that you all are working on. How long before we can see those updates?
That's a great question. As shared by MDHHS, the CWIS system, it will be a little bit of time, but we have been working internally, MDE along with MDH, the Michigan Data Hub, and CEPI, to see if in the interim there is something that could be developed digitally where we would be able to have the records transfer expedited. That's under discussion, hopefully moving towards development.
Do we have any idea of when we can have that? When are we going to start with rolling out different phases of it, or?
Because we are in exploratory discussions, we don't have that, but the next step, Ms. Tilly, would be to develop a timeline to see how realistic we could move it forward and how quickly we could.
Perfect. I know that the info for the liaison, sometimes in the past, it's been updated on the site, sometimes it hasn't. How are we with the information being updated on the site right now?
We are updating that quarterly. There was a slight delay this last quarter just for I was out. So we're working on a systematic method for ensuring that there are no lags going forward should I be out again. But it is on a quarterly basis. But as a reminder, the the Educational Entity Master is a public database that is accessible by anyone at any time. So that link lives on the foster care webpage as well as live on the CEPI site. So if someone is able to, and there are directions listed, so that information should be at real time as long as the districts or the local education agencies have updated their information. And we have built some systematic requirements within our consolidated application to ensure that our regional consultants are checking to make sure that those that are receiving federal funds have the right names listed in their application that match the educational entity master. So we're building in layers of double checking to make those assurances.
And also data collection. I saw a little of, a little data, but what what type of data collection are we doing to make sure that the policies, procedures, programs are effective?
Do you want to take that or do you want me to?
You can start.
Okay. We are federally required to report graduation dropout and academic achievement for those grades that participate in those required assessments. And that's what our current agreement with the Department of Health and Human Services says we can share, and that is what we are federally able to share.
Okay. So we don't go beyond that for data collection?
We have a lot of data. There's a lot of data collected, but what can be shared publicly is different than what we can publicly share, if that makes sense. Okay. Absolutely.
And I wanted to ask the students in Park West, is there anything that is pertinent that has not been addressed or covered that you would like to bring light to since you are here at the table that needs to be addressed right away?
I just have a quick question. I know this is like plan A, but is there another backup plan if this does not work?
Okay, so just to add to that, I think one of the most important things that the young people bring up is that the mandate for immediate record transfer was supposed to be implemented for all states by 2016, and they're very frustrated that we just don't have, like, they don't really care about technology. They just want some sort of legislation that says the records for foster kids must transfer immediately, and all schools know this as a law. So they can get it by fax, email, they don't care. But at least everyone to know the legislation that had the deadline of December 2016. That's really, a lot of people get frustrated. They're like, are we still doing this?
Yeah.
How is it that it hasn't happened? So I think that's like one of the biggest things, as well as the input of parents. It doesn't have to be bio parents, but whoever is standing for this person. No child should navigate schools without someone that stands for them as a parent. So I think these two things are like pertinent, but the record piece, and I think frustration of not being able to register themselves or access their transcripts to be able to see how they're doing. So I think these things.
And I think that's a very reasonable request. I think I definitely am frustrated with you. I think that it's way past time for this to happen. I know that they're working on it now, and that's why we all came to the table for this. But I understand, and I'm with you.
We're there. We're close.
Is there a plan B? Was her question.
We are actively through collaboration. We are working along with Park West, and we've been working with Representative Young because in order to move it forward, we would need legislative support so that because immediate, the definition to some is different and not the actual, immediate means now. And so I agree with you, Ms. Tilly. we do need to have a plan B where we can hopefully move it forward with legislative support.
And I would just add from the Department of Health and Human Services, our initial priority is that kids don't change schools. So in the event that the removal happens and that's a tool of last resort, that we aren't further having kids have that transition. And then in the event that there's a transition, we certainly want to support that the children have that immediate access to their grade level reconciliation. But our primary goal is for us to do everything that we can to make sure that children are staying in their schools of origin. That's the approach.
Thank you. Thank you both. Do you all have any other, is there any other input? No? Did that answer your question? Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. And the transportation is working. She's using the same transportation. She likes it, right?
Right.
Thank you very much. Great job with the presentation. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
everyone.
Good
Thank you.
discussion.
Yes.
This is important work. So we need to continue to work on it for the sake of putting students first and working together. So I'm glad to see that we're working and we got more work to do. So thank you. I also just wanted to mention that there are a few other people from the group that were here. Miss Ann Rossi from MD Michelle Williams, Jen Saylor, Kelly Alvarez, Irma Lopez, Bara Ahas, Latrice Royal, Don Carmody, Michelle Headley, and Joan Jackson from ND. We appreciate their work as well. Yes, Ms. Tilley.
I would ask that we continue with the annual update so that in 2026, December of 2026, that there is another update on the status of the collaboration and the policies and procedures that have been improved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation on accountability and supports. This will be for the Board of Education. The presenters will provide information about the federal accountability system, identification of schools in need of support to improve learner outcomes, and the ways that the Michigan Department of Education will differentiate support for districts and schools that are identified for comprehensive support and improvement, additional targeted support and improvement. We welcome Dr. Sue Carnell, as we know, Chief Deputy Superintendent, who just finished off as interim and did an outstanding job in welcoming me in and helping with my transition. I can't thank her enough. Dr. Delsa Chapman, Dr. Yvonne Dixon, Interim Director, Office of Partnerships District, Mr. Michael Powell, Assistant Director, Office of Educational Support, and Mr. Chris Janser, Assistant Director, Office of Educational Assessment and Accountability. No action required on this report. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Maleko. It is a pleasure for us to be here. Welcome aboard. Thank you for having us. We look forward to this presentation. So this presentation is on accountability and support. And what we're going to talk about, or what you're going to hear, is how our state accountability system works, how it identifies schools that are in the bottom 5%, and in some cases, the bottom 25%, and what supports the department provides to schools and school districts when they have been identified as, and you'll hear these terms, CSI, TSI, and ATS, and you'll hear an explanation of what that stands for while I turn it over to Chris Janser.
All righty, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to do a brief overview of our Michigan School Index System, the accountability system, and then go over some statewide numbers for you all before we turn it over to the supports. So the accountability system we're talking about complies with the federal Every Student Succeeds Act. It's the most recent federal reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And one of the big sort of responsibilities for states with ESSA is that it requires us to establish, implement, and run a statewide accountability system for all public schools in the state. So our school index, as I said, it's Michigan's accountability system, which we designed and implemented to comply with ESSA requirements. And some of those include differentiating all schools every year. We weight our system by 7 components. Another requirement is that we disaggregate results by the different student groups. And then the bulk of the presentation talks about the requirement to identify and then support schools for these federal support categories. So this shows the weighting scheme of the system. It's most heavily weighted towards student academic growth and student proficiency on state assessments. That's a federal requirement. But you can see it is broken out by different areas as well, including graduation rates, chronic absenteeism, access to different varieties of educators, and et cetera, et cetera. So the Michigan School Index System, we generate index values that range from 0 to 100 for almost every public school in the state, and a subset of those are then eligible for identification for these support categories. The easiest example to remember for these, the federally required identifications is the lowest 5% of schools with their overall index values, they are identified for comprehensive support and improvement. We also generate index values for each system component. We'll generate an index value for a school's proficiency, their graduation rate, and on, as well as any student group in a school that has at least 30 students in the group. And then finally, these index values represent a percent of target met concept. And this is basically just the fraction where if our target is 80% for proficiency and a school has 50% proficiency, we figure out the fraction of that. The example on the slide shows 50 out of 80 is a 62.5. All right, so let's talk about the federal support categories and their entrance criteria. So we have three that we're required to calculate. We have our comprehensive support and improvement schools. There are 4 different ways to be identified for these supports. I mentioned having an overall index value in the bottom 5%. That's one. We're also required to look at 4-year graduation rates, and if a school has a graduation rate that's at or below 67%, that's another pathway into this support category. And then the last 2 that you see there are the re-identification pathways, essentially schools that we had identified in previous years for these support categories. If they don't meet exit criteria, they get re-identified for this. And so CSI schools get they get identified, re-identified, and potentially exit every 3 years. The second category there is additional targeted support schools. We do these every 6 years or every other CSI cycle. And this is where we're looking at student groups within the school, so not the school overall, but the different student groups in the school. To be identified for this category, a school has to have at least one student group that's performing in the bottom 25% in each component that we're calculating for that school. In addition to that, one of those student groups within the bottom 25 also has to be performing like a bottom 5% school overall. And then finally, every year, we are required to identify schools for targeted support and improvement. This is a slice of the additional targeted support schools, and this is any school that has at least one student group, again, performing within that bottom 25% band in any component that we have in that school. That's done yearly. This next slide, it reiterates the entrance criteria that I just covered. I'm going to focus more on the exit criteria. So essentially, for CSI and ATS schools, to exit, you have to not be meeting the entrance criteria, fairly obvious, and you have to be showing improvement in proficiency in both math and ELA for 2 years at the school level overall for our CSI schools. And for our ATS schools, remember that's done at the student group level, we're looking at the improvement in proficiency um, for those student groups that were low performing to begin with. TSI schools, a little bit different. So the department, we calculate and then identify schools for this support category, but then ESSA leaves it up to the local school district to determine both exit criteria and the duration of those supports. All right, let's shift to statewide results. I'm mostly going to focus on the bottom row on this slide. So for 2024-25, 3,324 schools received an index report. Of that, 240 schools were identified or re-identified for comprehensive support and improvement. That represents 7.2% of all schools receiving an index report. One thing I'll point out, I'm going to look at the trend a little bit here. So since the pandemic, so since 21-22, we have seen a decline in the overall percentage of these schools. And one other thing that I'll point out here is that if you go all the way back to 2016-17, you'll see we had 4.7% of schools identified for this, and we had a bit of a jump in 21-22, and that's because 2016-17 was the initial year that we identified these. So if you remember when I was going through the entrance criteria, we only had 2 pathways in that initial year. In 21-22, we added those 2 additional pathways where if you were a school that we identified back in 2016-17 and you didn't exit, you get re-identified. So we saw a bit of a jump in numbers for 21-22 there. Oh, go back, please. Thank you. So looking at additional targeted support schools, we did not name new additional targeted support schools this year. So this is kind of a consistent number here. So 1.5% of all schools in the state are still in this ATS cohort. And then our annual targeted support and improvement category, we have 67 schools there. Again, we see a decline kind of year over year since the pandemic. They represent about 2% of our schools overall. You can see that last column, sorry, the vast majority of our schools are not being identified for additional supports. All right. So looking at kind of what went on with our comprehensive support and improvement schools, the good news is that 53 schools that we had identified for comprehensive support and improvement in fall of 22 exited by their own merit and with help of support from the department. They met exit criteria this fall, and they are no longer in that CSI bucket. Again, kind of going back to the previous slide, but 240 total schools are in our bucket in the 2025 cohort. 178 of those 240 were re-identified, so we're continuing supports for them. We had 59 brand new schools to CSI this year. And then we do have schools that close technically exit CSI status as well. And so we had 24 of those that have closed since fall of 22. And then kind of an asterisk to that, we have 3 additional schools that closed kind of after we take our data snapshot on June 30th. And so they're included in that 2025 CSI cohort, but because they're closed, they're not obviously getting supports from us. So for ATS schools, so I noted that we didn't identify new ATS schools this year. That's done every 6 years. So we'll look at this in 2028 for potentially new ATS schools. This was the first year though where we offered an optional early exit for previously identified ATS schools from fall of 22 that were meeting exit criteria halfway through that 6-year cohort. We did have 15 schools that met, and so they opted into exiting early, and thus, stopping the supports they get from the department for that. In addition to those 15, we had 2 schools that have closed since fall of 2022, so they're no longer in that ATS bucket. And then again, we didn't identify new schools or re-identify, but we still have 51 schools in our ATS bucket that are continuing on for the next 3 years. And then finally, our targeted support and improvement schools. Again, this is where we identify this every year. And then it's up to the local districts to determine when their schools meet exit criteria and exit them. So we do keep track of who we identify from year to year. 51 schools that we had identified in fall of '24 were not re-identified this year. So that's good news. They, you know, did what they could to improve their student group performance and weren't on this list this year. We had one school close since last time we did this in fall of '24. 22 schools that we identified last fall did get re-identified for TSI this year. And then 45 of the 67 total were newly identified TSI schools this year. All right, and then finally, I'm wrapping up, but I do want to reiterate that ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, the support categories were required to identify schools for supports. However, the department provides supports at the district level for those districts that have one or more schools that the accountability system has identified for supports. And then finally, just to kind of show you what this looks like sort of logistically within the department, and I'm only going to look at the box on the left here because this is the district level numbers. So our friends in the Office of Partnership Districts, they are providing supports to 59 school districts. And our friends in the Office of Educational Supports have 113 districts of which they are providing supports to. And that's out of a total of 879 school districts that had at least one school receive a school index report this fall. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Yvonne with OPD.
Thank you, Mr. Janzer. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Yvonne Dixon. As mentioned by Mr. Janzer, districts assigned to partnership status are supported by the Office of Partnership Districts. And these are districts that have schools in the bottom 5% of the Michigan School Index and schools with a 4-year graduation rate of 67% or below. The Office of Partnership Districts provides support at the district level, which allows us to provide support to all identified schools within the district, including alternative ed and virtual schools, ATS schools, and those CSI schools that are not meeting the entrance criteria for partnership agreements. The Office of Partnership Districts offers 3 levels of support, each tailored to meet district needs based on a comprehensive needs assessment. The first level is an intensive support level for those re-identified districts that are continuing with us in partnership. The second is the essential support level for newly identified districts. The third is the fundamental support level for districts identified due to having low graduation rate. 25 newly identified districts have been assigned to the essential level, 31 to the intensive level, and 1 to the fundamental level. We are very proud and are happy to celebrate that 12 districts and 33 schools have successfully exited partnership status in this cycle. And these districts that exit partnerships agreement status will be able to focus on creating a plan to sustain that progress and continue improving student achievement. Of the 32 districts that are continuing in partnership, we will work collaboratively with the district and conduct a 36-month academic outcomes evaluation where we take a look at a summary of their progress, any opportunities for improvement, and next steps to revise their goals and enhance implementation of evidence-based strategies. The Office of Partnership Districts provides technical support tailored to each district's needs. The intensity and focus of support are based on several factors, including the quality of curriculum and instructional practices, implementation of a multi-tiered system of supports, the capacity of administrators and teaching staff, as well as the effectiveness of resource allocation. Finally, we have districts that are new to the partnership model. And for those 26 districts that are new to us, we will conduct introductory meetings, webinars, Collaborate with the district in the development of a partnership agreement, which will include that a completion of a comprehensive needs assessment where we will develop goals, benchmarks, and outcomes, as well as identify evidence-based strategies, activities, and funding sources. I will transition to the Office of Educational Supports with Michael Powell.
And thank you, Dr. Dixon, and good afternoon to everyone. For the Office of Educational Supports, this marks our second accountability cycle to support this important initiative. Coordinated supports and services for districts with schools identified for CSI from OES will build upon the office service structures already in place, along with enhanced protocols to support the unique needs of each assigned school. OES will provide services to districts with schools identified for CSI that are not in a partnership agreement. The majority of OES assigned schools are virtual and/or alternative education schools with one or more of the following criteria. In the bottom 5% have a 4-year graduation rate of 67% or less, were previously identified for CSI and did not exit due to unimproved proficiency, and/or were previously identified for ATS and did not exit ATS, which then converts to CSI. As well, OES supports non-virtual and/or alternative education schools that were previously identified for ATS and did not exit ATS, thus converting to CSI. Thank you. For OES, our assigned staff will work cooperatively and collaboratively across all of our office units to provide coordinated support services to districts with CSI identified schools. Additionally, OES will leverage partnerships with other offices in the department as appropriate and with our local intermediate school districts with their continuous improvement teams. For this cycle, OES will implement a 2-level support structure: OES CSI basic supports and services, and OES CSI more rigorous services and resources, which I'll describe in more detail in the next few slides. So in addition to regular meetings with districts and school leaders, OES coordinated support services will include the following: coordination of services between the local intermediate school district and other MDE offices to provide customized, tailored services based on the needs of identified schools. As well, our office will leverage the continuous improvement process using the MyKit platform to support the review and/or revision of each school's improvement plan to include CSI-specific required items as defined under federal guidance. For example, does the plan include evidence-based strategies? Does the plan address the specific areas of need as a result of a comprehensive needs assessment for each identified school? Also, CSI basic supports will include training in areas of identified need, including the resource allocation review process and conducting approval and periodic review of school level goals and plans, providing guidance and feedback on the plan as a part of an ongoing monitoring and support process. Now, for the first 2 bullet points here, they represent the specific supports being offered to those schools assigned expressly to the Office of Educational Supports. The remainder are the suite of basic supports provided by OES staff to all CSI schools, whether or not the district has a partnership agreement. For those schools identified for more rigorous supports, OES services will include the following: access to the MyKIP Roadshow expansion pack, we call it, which includes scheduled training at locations statewide. Sessions are led by members of the continuous improvement team with intensified systems level support and an intentional focus on school specific plan revisions to address the reason or reasons for CSI identification. As well, units within OES provide one-on-one coaching supports to districts with identified schools, whether it calls for systems work or grant support or or supports with other processes to support the district. Alrighty, additionally, OES team will provide direct supports to schools and district leaders with an increased focus on identifying resource inequities to help with the revision of the current school level CSI plans. Offer EWIMS intensified training for select identified CSI secondary schools, and as well OES units intense initiative specific support. Each unit in OES will provide content, initiative, area specific support to districts and intermediate school districts in the unit's area of expertise. It could include literacy supports or other topics depending on the district's local needs.
So now I'm going to talk about additional targeted support. Michael, you want to talk more about that?
Yes. Districts supported by the Office of Educational Supports, they may have schools identified for additional targeted support or ATS. Schools identified for ATS, both as Mr. Chancellor shared earlier, one or more student subgroup consistently underperforming across components, and one or more students groups in the bottom 5% overall. Districts with schools identified for ATS that are not in a partnership agreement will be supported by OES as requested by the district. And we would apply the same basic level services outlined in the previous slides. Now to Dr. Carnell.
Thank you, Michael. So quickly, just a few comments about schools that are identified as targeted support and improvement. I call these the warning schools. These are the schools where they have students that may be in the bottom 25% in any of the categories that we mentioned in our accountability system. And so for that, a letter is sent to each district leader to say these schools have been identified for targeted support and improvement. And then I provide for them resources that they could use on their own, mainly planning in that particular area where there's deficiency so that can help them improve. I'm going to go back to Michael.
Yes, thank you. And now I'd like to provide a few updates on the Regional Assistance Grant for this current fiscal year, which provides funding for intermediate school districts to support districts with schools identified for CSI or ATS supports under the SCA's accountability system. So for schools identified for CSI or ATS or TSI, they're provided financial support as defined under federal law. Local education agencies, including intermediate school districts, are eligible for Title I Part A funds that are reserved by MDE under ESCA Section 1003, which is funding for school improvement. These additional funds are distributed via the Regional Assistance Grant. A state may only award Section 1003 funds to a local education agency, including intermediate school districts that serve schools that meet statutory requirements for the identification of CSI, TSI, or ATS. Annually, Regional Assistance Grant Funds, or RAG for short, are distributed on a formula basis using enrollment-based allocations to eligible intermediate school districts. ISD grant recipients provide supplemental supports and services and resources to districts within their service area with schools identified for the various categories. So for the current fiscal year, select eligible intermediate school districts will receive a supplemental RAG allocation to support districts with schools within their service area that are newly identified as CSI. These funds will support the planning and preparation process consistent with federal requirements. And back to you, Dr. Cornell.
And I'll turn it back to Dr. Maleko. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job. Appreciate all the details and the high-quality presentation. Do any of the board members have any questions or comments? Mr. McMillan?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. So what is the incentive to exit the partnership agreements? I mean, they get money and support while they're a partnership agreement. Is it, I mean, is it a hassle? I don't know that, thankfully, they're not designated a D or an F or that, like we got rid of that thing. We got rid of that, but I'm just curious, like, is it all hands on deck to kind of get out of this, or is it kind of like, I mean, is it 3 years? So I'm just curious. I mean, what's the incentive?
Right. In relation to the D or the F, no one really likes the title of
Right.
CSI or that they've been designated as a partnership district.
Yeah, okay. Are any schools or districts returning to partnership after they've exited? I mean, we've been doing this for quite a while, so have they come back?
Yes, there are some districts that have exited and have returned.
I mean, is that a lot, or, I don't need a number, but I mean, is there a good number of them that have?
I would not say it's a significant number considering the number of districts that we have in partnership.
Okay. And I guess, they're exiting based on, I understood that, like, this pie chart that says how we calculate based on the feds saying we had to calculate, so 34% growth, 29% proficiency. So they get into it, they get out of it by making sure they're no longer in the bottom 5%, and that they've had some growth in math and English in the last 2 years.
ELA, yes.
So is that successful? I mean, I guess, is that, a part of me wanted to, I think I had mentioned in years past, maybe we should be taking a value, have parents do, evaluate, what's it called?
Survey?
Take a survey, a statistically sampled survey at the beginning and at the end, and see if parents are happy, if teachers are happier, if, like, what's the sense of the school? Okay, so they're not in the bottom 5, are they in the, are they 6th and they just barely, I mean, is it, like, how do we know this is successful?
I'll start off and anyone can join after that. But I do want to point out that the snapshot of how they're progressing or their test scores get them in. They have to show growth over 2 years to get them out. And the team really believes that that's important because it shows a trend of progress or making progress.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to add?
I was going to talk a little bit, using the multiple years of improvement, we're trying to get at like sustainability. So, sustaining that improvement so that they don't get re-identified. But yeah, you can answer.
Have you ever considered a survey or, I mean, just kind of getting the feel that, particularly teacher, I mean, parents especially, certainly parents, but I'd love to hear, what do teachers think it's going into it, coming out of it? Are we, is it a lot better? Is it a little better? Where did we improve? Did systems get overhauled and changed so that we're on a good trajectory? Have we looked at them 5 years later after exit? And like, where are they doing now?
I'm not sure if we looked at them 5 years. Yvonne can add to that, but I do know that we have commissioned EPIC to do a study, and EPIC has come to the board table and said we have surveyed some of the teachers and talked about how they felt about their partnership agreement. What about the leadership? What needs to be improved in the school district? Whether or not they are exiting, they being the teachers exiting the school in a faster rate, or whether they feel that with the combination of the MDE infusion, if I might say, and the work of the new leader and the support of the district and the ISD, do they feel that they can stay in that building with that support? The majority of the teachers feel that with that support, it does help them stay in that building a little bit longer. That's what the EPIC report, I believe that's what the EPIC report showed.
Thank you.
And if I'm wrong with that, Mr. McMillan, I'll let you know. But,
Thank you.
Ms. Schneider?
Yes, thank you. So this is a 3-year cycle, if I'm correct, right? We've talked about this as a 3-year cycle for the federal supports.
For CSI.
For CSI.
Yes.
So it's a 3-year cycle. So, and I heard you say that schools can exit. Is there a specific period of time they have to stay out of before they can re-enter? What is the rolling re-enrollment, if you will, as a CSI school after it exits?
So, no, so like so a school, say, for example, we identified a school for CSI back in 2016-17. We would have reevaluated them for exit. I mean, pandemic messed that up, but so it ended up being 21-22. It wouldn't be possible for a school to meet exit criteria, but also like get re-identified immediately because the exit criteria looks at that. So what would be potentially possible is that a school that we identified in 2016-17 met the exit criteria in 21-22, and then maybe this year fell back into met the entrance criteria basically and got identified again.
In the statute that's anything related to time?
No, there's not like a
exit to re-entrance?
Not like a cooling off period or no, nothing like that.
Goal setting. One of the things that when, we've gone, this is year 2, right? But during the first year, there was kind of a regular board member brief on goal setting for partnership districts. And they're supposed to be long-term goals, right? So my question is, in that 3-year cycle that they stay in that same 3-year cycle, do schools retain the same goals that they set in year 1 through year 3?
In the beginning of the partnership agreement, the schools identify goals with interim target benchmarks and then academic outcomes at the 3-year period. So we reassess at 18 months, then again at 36 months, but we maintain that goal for that 3-year period of time. No, it does not.
So the goalpost doesn't change. They have to set the goals that they intend to go after. And and then there is fidelity rubric assessments that I thought I heard you talk about. Can you describe what a fidelity rubric assessment looks like in relationship to maintaining progress within those goals?
I believe, good afternoon.
Hi.
I believe you may be referring to the EWAMS program.
Yes.
That particular program does focus on students who are disengaged from education and efforts to kind of curb that off. And so for those, within our office, for those re-identified CSI schools, we are opening the door to make it available for those schools to be eligible for EWAM supports and trainings. And so that would be a part of an assessment process to determine the needs and to customize their training and supports.
So the fidelity rubric assessments is not a federally mandated part of the statute. It's something that you guys are naming part of the process to reach goals.
It is part of the EWIMS process.
Okay. And is EWIMS part of the statute that you have to adopt it, or is that something that our state has designed?
EWIMS is not part of the statute. EWIMS is how do I put it? It is a strategy that is accepted in the What Works Clearinghouse as a national strategy that works well in helping students stay on target to graduate. Does that help?
Yes. Okay. Especially when you put it into context of like absenteeism and such, correct? Okay. Do we have specific fidelity rubric assessments for each school or just one?
So if I understand it correctly, team, you can correct. Um, if you are part of the EWIMS system, if you adopt EWIM as a strategy, then you implement a fidelity rubric assessment. So any school that adopts EWIMS would implement this fidelity rubric assessment.
And it's unique to their goals, or it's EWIMS sponsored in relationship to a issue? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out exactly what this process looks like in goal attainment over time.
It's a little, the purpose of EWIMS is to make sure that the school building tracks students' success to graduate. So it may be English language arts success. It may be chronic absentee success. It may be transportation success. So it may be related to the benchmark or targeted goal that is set through partnership district, but then again, it may not be.
Okay, so it's a structural support for a partnership district that has set goals that it applies to that structural support, if you will.
And then also, if I just quickly could add, there are some districts that are identified as CSI for two reasons. One is academic, and the other one might be low graduation rate. So if we think at the high school, EWIMS might be a great strategy to help to increase the graduation rate.
Fair enough. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hearing no other questions. Thank you again. I just wanted to mention too, this is prior to me becoming superintendent in Dearborn, but when we were a priority school, it's a huge burden on the whole community, and they all step up together. And something districts don't want, believe me, it's the parents, it's the staff, it's working together. And I also want to say, Miss Bailey had invited me in my previous hat to be part of EWIMS and for our graduation intervention model. So I was at the meeting, it was very impressive, about a month ago, and then they actually have us presenting. I'll be wearing my Dearborn, I guess, hat in our role of what we did over in Dearborn to increase graduation rates up to 95% and college admission rates very high, over 20%. So I was very impressed with it, and I said, yeah, I will follow through despite the fact that I'm going into this position. So it was good for me to be there and learn, and Ms. Bailey was very welcoming, and I appreciated what they did. So thank you.
Dr. Maleko, may I may I say two things?
Sure.
One, I want to recognize Liz Newell in the room.
Sure.
Liz Newell is very integral in pulling together members of MDE to talk about accountability and support. In fact, we have a meeting every week. Thank you, Liz. And the other person is Matt Gleason. Matt Gleason is, I don't know exactly his title, but I know he's wonderful as a statistician. I mean, he just knows so much and can make magic happen along with Chris. So I just wanted to recognize these two important people who help with the process.
Thank you, Dr. Carnell and
Thank
team.
you.
All right. Next, we have report of the State Board President.
First, I want to again officially welcome you, Dr. Maleko, to your first State Board of Education meeting as State Superintendent of Public Instruction. You're doing an amazing job so far.
Thank you.
And we look forward.
In a day and a half.
Yes. And we look forward to working with you to advance Michigan's top 10 strategic education plan and to keep students at the center of every decision we make. I also want to echo what others have said, and you, Dr. Maleko, in offering a heartfelt thank you to you, Dr. Carnell, for your steady and thoughtful leadership as interim state superintendent during this transition. You have stepped, and just really say that on behalf of the board, to just publicly acknowledging your service, your professionalism, and your unwavering commitment to Michigan's children. As we close out the year, I also want to acknowledge the reality that too many children and families are facing in fear of their own government. We are hearing reports from communities across Michigan that immigration enforcement actions and ICE-related activity are creating fear and instability in homes, neighborhoods, and schools. Families are afraid to show up for court, to seek medical care, and most concerning for us as the board is to send their children to school. And that is why I believe that the board should strongly consider a future resolution in support of immigration-related bills now before the Michigan Senate, and hopefully we can get an update on those bills today. But there are bills to protect schools, places of worship, hospitals, and other sensitive locations by designating them as spaces where immigration enforcement cannot occur except in very limited serious circumstances. Safeguarding personal information from being used for immigration enforcement without judicial warrant, and prohibit law enforcement officers from concealing their identities with masks except in narrowly, and I mean narrowly defined situations. At their core, these bills are about trust and safety, making sure students and children can go to school, to church, or to the doctor without fearing that they or their families will be detained or disappeared. That is a basic precondition for learning. I also want to again discuss some of what we heard at the top of our meeting. What is deeply troubling, developments affecting children's safety and trust in public institutions, and that is the recent actions weakening longstanding vaccine protections for newborns, and that is the hepatitis B vaccine. We know that earlier this month, just a few weeks ago, last week, the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices restructured under Health and Human Services. Secretary Robert F. Kennedy voted to end the universal recommendation that all newborns receive the hepatitis B vaccine at birth, shifting instead to a risk-based individual decision approach. For more than 30 years, universal newborn vaccine has helped drive down hepatitis B infections in children by roughly 98%. Pediatric organizations and public health experts across the country have condemned this vote as ideologically driven and dangerous, warning it could reverse decades of progress and put infants at unnecessary risk. So, as we end this year, I do want us to sit with a hard truth. Our children are navigating school safety, concerns ranging from gun violence to mental health crisis. Many immigrant and refugee children are now also living with the fear that school itself might become a place of immigration enforcement. And at the same time, we are watching politics override science in decisions that weaken basic protections like vaccines. Children should not be afraid of their government. Our government at every level should be protecting children, not frightening them, and certainly not putting their health at greater risk. As president of the board, I believe we have both a moral and a constitutional responsibility to speak clearly when policies, whether on immigration enforcement or public health, undermine the safety, stability, and well-being of the students we serve. In the coming months, again, I will ask for us, the board, to take a look at take a more formal look at or approach of more formal resolution supporting Senate's bills 508 to 510 to affirm that schools and other sensitive spaces must be safe places where families can seek education, justice, and care without fear of immigration. And then I reiterate our commitment to science-based public health protections for children. You know, a couple of months ago, we passed a resolution in support, and then hoping that we can look at the new resolutions that are the new bills that are coming forward from the State House. I look forward to working with each of you, with our new superintendent, and with our partners across the state to ensure that Michigan's children can learn, can grow, and can thrive without fear, and with the full protection of both sound policy and sound science. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh, for your report. I'll move along to my first report as state superintendent. Thank you, board members, for the opportunity to give this report, Dr. Pugh and everyone. I'm using a slide deck PowerPoint, and the team has been great because I'm used to Google and I'm converting now over to Microsoft. and they've helped me with that conversion, David and others, and Bob. On that, you see a couple pictures. I'll just say I like pictures. You may have already discovered. We got the picture at lunch. That one is from I think my second or third year teaching at Salina in Dearborn, and then the other picture was my wife and my two members from the staff and my mother and stepfather. It was after the second interview. So when I was here with all of you. So family is very important to me, and I just wanted to include them. Yes, I want to thank Dr. Rice, and as I've been speaking at conferences, I've been thanking him for the work he did, and he helped me in my transition with calls as he was doing that, and I appreciate known him for many years. And Dr. Carnell, of course, who's now working with me and has made this transition as I moved into this board meeting, seamless with the entire MD team, was very welcome. And as I mentioned, yesterday was I was very excited yesterday, and I got a big warm welcome with these cards and things in my office, and it was a nice surprise. So I just wanted to say, look, even though I started officially yesterday, I kind of was starting. I think the board knows I've been sending you some updates from my personal email, and there's been a lot of conversations. Thank you, Dr. Pritchett and Dr. Pugh, for coming on the day just before I was driving to Traverse City in September to sign the contract, because if I didn't sign it, all my superintendent friends and colleagues would have been asking, what's going on with your contract? So you guys came, we got that done in September, got it finalized. Had a great conversation with Terrence Martin from AFT. I work very closely with leadership. He invited me. We had a very positive presentation there. I've been meeting one-on-one with state board members. Either we have met or we're in the process or we have it scheduled, and I will get a meeting in with everyone. We're just working on those last minute into the new year. So I appreciate that. I think it's very important. Dr. Pugh, you had me with a group of wonderful educators in Saginaw. I appreciate it. It's a fantastic high school, actually. I told my the team back in Dearborn they may want to visit it as they're looking at a bond proposal. Other things, engage. I continue to engage and build relationships moving forward. I'm going to continue to do that. Met with the governor, had a very good meeting with the governor to talk about partnerships, to talk about literacy. I know Emma Young has been fantastic, and Ms. Michelle Richard in transition. And I know the board did give an invitation. We have a Michigan Literacy Summit coming up next Monday, and so we're excited about that. I spoke at the Balmer Group, which provides a lot of funding for summer discovery, and I believe that's something you'll see later in my report that I think is important, and that we deal with student learning loss, summer learning loss. I've also been reviewing a lot of documents, thanks to Dr. Carnell. I have the whole book printed of all the reading that helped me in advance, and every single department created memos to help my onboarding and transition. I really appreciate that. Other things, meeting with representatives of senators, going to conferences. I had a great interaction with Senator Camilleri and Representative Kelly. At the same token, we got into a picture as they were talking about the budget. It had us after it had just passed, and we all know it got delayed. So we'll continue to work with whoever is going to help students, and so I'll continue with that. Dr. Carnell brought me into the state board debriefs and things, so I would be prepared. I know you had some very long meetings the last couple months, and you did a great job. And thanks to Dr. Pritchett, Mr. DeVault, great meeting, brilliant people over there in Macomb, and just got a lot of positive information to help my transition on budgeting and other areas. And I've been meeting with other ISD superintendents and other superintendents in transition. And then senior leadership meetings. I think some of them got you can see, like, I don't like pictures or anything. Everyone, we got it, and you got it. Now, it's okay, it's not mandatory. Some people might run out, like Dr. Carnell, we know that, but others are jumping to get in the picture. I'm teasing. I have that back too. We know some people really like them, but that's okay. And then the December meetings, just, engagements with associations that constantly, I think, you hired me, you saw my relationship I have. I'm going to leverage that, working with the different associations. That's Dr. Severson from MAISA. And then I attended the Future Leaders Michigan celebration. I know, Emma Young, you were at a lot of these events that I was also at. We happened to be. Mr. Superintendent Paulston really helped me with kind of getting a head start on the state listening tour that I'm going to talk about. We had multiple meetings, so the west side of the state was the first visit I actually had prior to being official, but it helped with the onboarding. And then just last week, the MEMSPA, Middle School and Elementary Principals Association, I was a part of them years ago, and Sydney Malik invited me there and just felt really positive. The last thing I gotta mention, the transition, and I'm sorry that everyone had difficult rides this morning. Mine was a little easier because I am closer now. And my wife and I, we were very happy as we transitioned, and I got everything situated here in the local Lansing area in Okemos. So I'm gonna throw out this, the team, the team, the team. I've been in that dressing room down there. I believe in teamwork and collaboration. Over at the, it's down there. If you ever go in the big house, you've probably seen it on TV. And I just believe that this is what you're gonna get from me, working together with board members. I just think it's so important that we are all there together. I'm a big hockey and sports person, so this is gonna come out in my personality. I won't hide it. Actually, I was playing on Sunday morning too, so I'm gonna continue to play. I believe Dr. Harmala still plays too, right? You tried to get me in a game years ago, I remember early in the morning, a fundraiser. So anyway, I say, or you could say football, don't tackle, don't body check your own team. It's like, okay, we're all in it. Just like today, we're talking about with foster care, we're all in it to help those students. Let's all just come together and work together, MDE to local districts, to unions, because we have a lot more in common as we're trying to elevate public education and why we're doing it for the benefit of the students. That's what my motto is. I always see the glass half full and going through adversity. Okay, we're gonna have differences. We know there's gonna be politics, but in the end, why are we all here? I mean, I said it at the interview, we're all here to help students. So I just believe in unifying, teamwork, collaboration. You're gonna see this from me. That's who I am. I wanna work with everybody on, whatever group that wants to help students and help public education, that's me. You might see I already got a picture in there from you. That was pretty quick, right? That's my former board and other members when they gave me a 30-year send-off. But then we have the new team here, and I was very pleased, and I appreciate everyone getting in that. And thank you, Dan, for helping too with some of the slide things. I forgot I was not giving you the signal. All right. We talked about that before because I don't have the clicker. So, okay, I'm in Lansing, so I showed U of M. We got to be politically correct, right? We got to give a little bit on MSU, right? We can't. So we got a quote there on Tom Izzo. And then there's a couple of things that I think are important. What's that? A couple of areas that, Martin Luther King, I love this quote, and then Diane Ravitch, I've referenced her in my dissertation and research, and I've looked at her work, and she talks a lot about assessments and the limitations of standardized assessments as well. So, students first, I said it at the interview, and that's what we talked about, and I don't remember, I unveiled this in the second. So Bob's working on it already, because we didn't have an official sign, and it's getting close, so I did tell Bob that was one of my first official acts, because we weren't allowed until I became official that we're gonna get a sign approved, right, Bob? So, and he's right on top of it, so it's more to come. We're gonna have the easier ones that can fit in the pocket, and we just pull them out, and we're gonna continue to do that and advocate and get that message out. It's not just about the sign, it's about truly believing and engaging with staff and, having students. So sorry, Dan, I didn't do my cue. This is, MDE staff. So staff engagement as I research. We're gonna meet with MDE staff, value the staff, wanna hear their thoughts, I wanna hear their challenges, opportunities for improvement. I did get a little head start a few weeks ago. We're gonna work in collaboration. I also told them in my team meetings, look, I want people to challenge my opinion too, because we need to get to the bottom of what's right, not just what I want, but what's right for kids. And so we need to have differing opinions so that we ultimately come up with what's best to support Michigan students. Statewide listening tour. I'm very excited about this. I know people are probably like, well, what does this mean? What's going on here? I think getting out to districts, as a local superintendent, I made over 400 visits a year into the schools, engaging students, engaging staff. I want to engage educators, parents, students, administrators, board members, stakeholders. I've already gotten a lot of requests, but I do plan to do that. And as I said, I got a head start, but I'm excited about that. Hockey, again, I got a little quote in here. Wayne Gretzky, one of the greatest players of all time. I skate to where the puck is going, not to where it has been. That's the top 10 plan. I would like to, and I mentioned this at my second interview, bring people and stakeholders back after doing some of that research and the tours and working with MDE staff. I've been talking to board members about what areas can we do to bring more enthusiasm. Talk to the governor, Emma Young, through the governor's office, of how can we bring enthusiasm together and maybe do some tweaking of the plan to see how, it was 6 years ago, that was the last time it was looked at. I think it'd be, we won't do it necessarily right away, but sometime into my first year, I'd like to do that with the support of the board, hopefully to look at that and to bring additional attention, again, for the benefit of our students. Um, challenges. We know student achievement literacy, we're working on literacy. It's a big area. We talked about educational shortage, but I know retention. MD has done a lot of positive work. There's been funding allocated. I could see it specifically in Dearborn, how that's improved with the educational shortage, and appreciate the grant funding. Early childhood programs, I'm big support on that. We talked about mental health and safety and attendance. I appreciated hearing about the trauma-informed instruction from the Teacher of the Year. I think that was great. You're going to hear about equity. You heard about it in my interview. I said, look, equity funding I think is important. And then post-secondary achievements and readiness results are also. So as I mentioned these things, I'm aligning it to the current top 10. These are the goals that are there. And, I know that the My Leap is overseeing goal 1, but we need to work together because early childhood is very important. In Dearborn, we did I get the name wrong, but the 3-year-old preschool program, Strong Beginnings. We implemented there as a pilot. I think that's important. I think the 4-year-old program is important. Anytime I had additional slots from the county, we would always grab them for the benefit of our students, preschool students. Thanks, Dan, for being right on with me here. Literacy and leverage dyslexia laws. I appreciate the state board's position on that. Those are questions that came up even during my interview. I know you're very supportive. Dr. Rice had started with that. Dr. Cardell, I do support. I've thought about it in depth, and I do support the initiative of the mandatory training. I also support, though, the carrot. How can we incentivize these things? I've already talked to the governor's office and others. How can we talk to legislators to incentivize, maybe work with the different foundations to get money? Because a lot of times working with my superintendent colleagues, there's things that they need to do, and there's areas, especially in smaller districts. So what kind of funding support can we give them to make sure that people can get the training needed to support the science of reading, to support our students? Health, safety, and wellness, mental health, they're critical. We just have to address those. We see, the area. I'm a big supporter of restorative practices as well. Goal 4, 5, and 6, they kind of overlap to some degree, but learning opportunities, graduation rates, adults post-secondary, that's very important. I think that we have options for students and ensure, the testament isn't just graduating from high school, it's how successful are you after that. CTE programs and others I think are very important. And as I mentioned, goal 7, invest in the teacher pipeline. We need to continue to do that. Advocate for equity, or adequacy and equity funding. SFRC, that came up in my meeting with Macomb heavily about the SFRC. We have a formula, we have data like that. I think, we need to advocate and continue to work with the legislature, the governor's office in these specific areas. And I mentioned some other funding for, English language learners, special education, and at-risk students are other examples. Other areas I think that we should look at, and maybe as we, revisit top 10, but we should be doing things anyway. A lot of students are connected maybe with the arts, and I think that's important. And then, so what are things that you can't necessarily measure? I mean, those scores don't measure everything. We need to look at that and look at things that are valuable that connect students to schooling. And I did want to just point out, we maybe should look at mathematics and algebra and other areas that are not currently part of the top 10. It might just be something we need to revisit and see if we want to add that or something to that degree. I mentioned you're going to see it. That's who I am. I'm not going to change the person. It's going to be with students. It's going to be interacting, and it's going to be collaborating. I mentioned about summer programs and extended learning opportunities as well. I want to work in collaboration with ISD superintendents. I think there were some reports on that, on how we can do that. That it's important. I mean, MDE is here, is one department, 500 staff members, and maybe could need even more staffing from what I'm hearing in my research. So how can we work together? I think we need to leverage and work together. ISDs can be a great support. I had great experience as a local superintendent in getting support with Wayne County and working with other ISD superintendents. Well-funded support and improving areas such as literacy and numeracy. We know that. I think we're all on board with that. How can we continue to fund those areas? Maybe look at cost sharing services. I know that MDE partners and different things, you know, we're talking about some MyLead partnerships in other areas, but also local districts as well. How can we collaborate and work together? Technology, it's not going anywhere. AI, I've seen some of the things in AI, and AI is not going away. So how can we embrace these different aspects as we move forward in the future to benefit students? In AI, there are some research out there on how it can also support students from differentiated backgrounds with equity. And then just, you know, stakeholder engagement and customer service. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to change who I am. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be interacting. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be in places and, you know, working. I'm a big social media. Dr. Pugh, I'm really impressed. You're all over social media. So anyway, social media, I said, look, we're going to be doing this. I've been doing it for years. It's a way for me to connect. You got to be there in person to make the connection. But I will say it's a great way to put the positive message out there. You know, the way I look at it, social media in some regards has been damaging to society for a lot of reasons. But I'm a big advocate of using it and putting out only positive. Because if somebody is, you know, you got to put out the correct messages, because if you're not putting it out there, someone else might be putting it out and you may not like what they're saying. So I advocate for this for districts, for superintendents. So you will see me on all these different social medias. I've not gotten into TikTok yet, but Instagram is the big following. And so we will be promoting that, and I will be working in collaboration with Bob's department with the MDE social media. And I see he's already been jumping on a lot of things there too. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay, I do these 1-minute messages. This came from the students. I have a student advisory council, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Dr. Garcia, I think I told Karen we're going to make sure that I attend all those meetings. The students told me about this. Okay, Dr. Maleko, you know, these 7 to 10 minutes, no one's watching these longer videos that you're doing these things. They're like, though, we want to hear what your updates are. So in COVID, I started doing these 1-minute messages just to update the community. But then the students like getting in and the parents, and it was very positive, and they came, you know, they became this fad. And so the reason we call them 1 minute is because at the time on Instagram, you couldn't go over a minute or it wouldn't get posted. But we've evolved a little bit. We've been doing them in Dearborn, and then we have a little surprise for one that we did recently. And in fact, we taped one in my office, just my new office, but it's not ready. But we'll check this one out here. Hi, everyone. It's another 1-minute message update. I'm here with Dr. Pugh. We're at Saginaw United. We just had a wonderful one-on-one meeting and then a group meeting, Dr. Pugh, with a great group of people. How did the meeting go?
It went very well. It was an impromptu meeting. Thank you, Dr. Maleko, for sitting through and allowing yourself to be introduced to our community. We met with Jamie Kratz, the superintendent for Saginaw Township Schools, as well as Dr. Ramont Roberts and his board, the board of the Saginaw Public School District. So they were very excited that you would come to our community and be able to be introduced. And I know that it made them feel secure about where we are going with our education system here in the state of Michigan, with you being at the helm.
Thank you so much, and I'm so excited to work with you, the rest of the board, and all school stakeholders in Michigan. It was a great first stop for me on my entry plan. Thank you so much, Dr. Pugh. So you'll see more of these. We're going to work with the MDD, figure out how to do it. Dearborn's helping me in transition. And so thank you, Dr. Pugh, for getting in 1 minute. We converted it from the Dearborn background. Actually, I had parents in that from Dearborn say, well, you're not going to stop doing the 1-minute messages, are you? I'm like, no, we're going to continue. We'll get students, we'll get staff in there. I think it's just positive. We got to promote a positive message here, working together. So, you know, we talk about sports. Okay, thank goodness they won last week. We all know, I'm sure we're all Lions fans here, right? We're, you know, the Thanksgiving wasn't so good, but hey, this was the Browns game where they beat the Browns handily back in September. And that's my 2 children, Justin and Ashley. So we're down there during warm-ups, and we always like to go down and, you know, get a picture or whatever. And I said, sir, you know, would you mind taking a picture of my family with, you know, my wife doesn't go to football. She'll go to hockey, but she won't go to football. And he's like, yeah, he was such a nice gentleman. And then my son knows everybody. And he says, Dad, do you know who that is? that's Almonds and Ross St. Brown's dad, father. So then after he took the picture, we're talking to him, and then he's talking to us about how, we got to beat the Bears, and, like with his, so it was interestingly in the same position in the opener of the year before against the Rams, we met his mother. So they're such nice people. So it was pretty cool. I got Dr. Colbert here, who from Wayne County RISA, and we always do this traditional photo when I'm down there, and some of my own buddies. So I got Dan Campbell on there because it's about culture. It's about positive culture and working together. And we all know the Lions for so long had this, and it's just establishing and being positive. And, Dan Campbell, we're all excited, and it's a sport area. So I don't know if you remember this, but Dan Campbell, when he did his entry speech, he said, so this team is going to be built on, we're going to kick you in the teeth, all right, and when you punch us back, we're going to smile at you, and when you knock us down, we're going to bite off your kneecaps. Does anybody remember that entry speech? All right, well, I want to make it clear I'm not doing any of that, okay? Okay, or I won't be doing any of that. But what I will be doing is working hard for the benefit of the students. I think we're at an important moment for public education, a moment that calls for collaboration, listening, and shared purpose. I accepted this role because I believe every child in Michigan deserves a world-class education, no matter their background, zip code, or circumstance. The mission that guides me is simple, and you've seen it. It's students first. This work is not about politics, titles, or positions. It's about unifying behind the principles of public education and ensuring that every child in every community has the opportunity to succeed. Our students cannot wait, and neither can we. I look forward to working with the board, the governor's office, the legislature, the partners across the state of Michigan, and on a national level in public education to once again, put Michigan at the top. I want to thank all of you, and I'm very excited to be here working in positive collaboration with all of you today. So thank you for allowing my first official report. All right, so we'll move along. And next we have a legislative update. We'll now hear from Mr. Bob Wheaton, Director of Office of Public and Governmental Affairs, and Ms. Olivia Ponte, Legislative Liaison in the Office of Public and Governmental Affairs, who will provide the state and federal legislative update. And I can tell already they've been working very hard. Lots of communication has been going on between Bob and Olivia. Helped me with some communications last week as I was driving up to Traverse City.
Good afternoon, board members, and welcome again to Dr. Maleko. And I'll turn it over to Olivia now to give us our legislative update for today.
All right, thanks, Bob. So in the last month, we did get two bills that were signed into law, not necessarily education related, but they do affect school aid in the department. So PA 32 and PA 33 of 2025 were signed into law on November 18th. And what those bills do is establish the definition of a legislatively directed spending item, so otherwise known as an earmark. And it sets the criteria for the earmarks that are eligible for expenditure. And then the companion law to this amends the Management and Budget Act to prescribe the public disclosure form for these LDSIs that legislators will now have to publicly sponsor going forward. So moving on to this week, much of November was taken up by hunting season, so there wasn't a ton of legislative activity, but they are back in full swing. We expect a House Education Committee tomorrow that will be taking up the work skills assessment bills, the Senate Bill 349 that actually already passed the Senate, and these bills would amend both the revised school code and the state school aid act to provide an opt-out for the work skills assessment part of the Michigan merit examination. The House Education Committee also plans to take up House Bill 5154, which would require districts to accept cash at any interscholastic athletic activities. The Senate Education Committee is also meeting tomorrow right after House Ed. They're going to report out a bill they've already heard testimony on, Senate Bill 433. This is the bill that would require MDHHS to provide health notices for schools for distribution about the dangers of tobacco, nicotine, THC, vaping, and illicit hemp products. And then lastly, the Senate Education Committee will be taking testimony on Senate Bills 470 and 471. These are bills that would require MSP, the Michigan State Police, to create a statewide school safety program to identify and manage threats by assessing student risk and tracking intervention plans. And then the companion bill would provide $13 million for the Behavioral Threat Assessment Management Program Fund that would be created in the Department of Treasury. And then lastly, I heard Dr. Pugh ask for an update on the Senate bills regarding ICE. So those haven't had, Senate bills 508 through 510 have not had movement since their November 6th committee hearing. But as you mentioned, Senate Bill 508, which is sponsored by Senator Kavanaugh, would create safe locations from immigration enforcement like schools, places of worship, and hospitals. Senate Bill 509, sponsored by Senator Chang, would prohibit government agencies from providing individuals identifying information without a warrant. And Senate Bill 510, which is sponsored by Senator Moss, would block the use of masks by law enforcement and require they wear identification. And that concludes my update.
Thank you for the update. Are there any comments or questions that board members may have? Dr. Pugh?
Just on the, thank you for the Senate bill updates regarding immigration. Do you have any updates on or any updates, thoughts on the House bills related to vaccines?
They have not been introduced yet. So yeah, that package, the House Democratic Caucus introduced them via press conference last Friday. So the one pager is available online, but the actual bill language is not.
Okay, and I don't know if we can say anything about 31 double N. Is it 31 double N? The waivers? Am I? 31 double A, thank you. I don't know if we can say anything about that. Is it?
We have some litigation pending. So.
Okay. I didn't.
Yeah.
I think that's it for me.
Anybody else? Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Dr. Pritchett, did you have anything you wanted? No, you're good. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Wanted to make sure I didn't miss.
Mitch usually does that.
Oh, Mitch. Oh, okay. You're good? Okay. Okay. Dr. Robinson. Yeah. All right. Everyone's good. Okay. I guess we're at the end. We're up to final comments by any board members that you may have. Mr. McMillan?
Thank you. In your presentation, Superintendent Maleko, you had mentioned Diane Ravitch as somebody that you either worked with or respected highly. And I, back in 2013, after I stopped Common Core in the budget, when I was in the legislature, I was trying to keep it stopped, and there were hearings all that summer. And at my invitation, Diane Ravitch came and testified via video in opposition to Common Core, in support of what I was trying to do. So I just wanted to mention that. Maybe we put that whole Common Core back on the table. That would be a good idea. And then secondly, the discussion about, experts. The Trump administration, RFK Jr., they have appointed experts that are highly credentialed. I mean, Bhattacharya, Kuldorf, Makari, these people come as Harvard PhDs, professors, with hundreds of peer-reviewed articles and works. I mean, they may not be your experts, but it's clear the experts that a lot of you had supported failed us during COVID. And they happen to be captured, a lot of them, by big pharma, big medicine, kind of the establishment. And so I think it's, now they don't want these experts. They want to go and in Michigan, they want to say that some private entity, a club, as somebody talked about during the public comment, now they're going to look to them because they don't like this set of experts. They want the set that's still captured by Big Pharma and Big Medicine. So I just find it ironic that people who care about health, just have, they are claim to care about health. It's only if they're experts, but when other experts that are there, they don't want to listen to them. So it's somewhat interesting. So that was all my observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Any other comments by anybody? Ms. Tilley?
Thank you. We keep getting misinformation that keeps coming up and going around. So I just wanted to address a couple of things. One, we are not mandating vaccines or voting on or pushing law to mandate vaccines. I don't know where that came from today. Two, I wanted to address, because I know I've said it, and I know the department said it, but from my end, we did not suggest that the Michigan Elliott Larson Act mandated verbiage for the LGBTQ community. What I said was alignment, not mandate. We have to be careful with our words because words have meaning. So, not one time did I say that it was mandated. One definition of alignment, for those that need to know, the alignment of something is its position in relation to something else or to its correct position. So the Elliott Larson Act was originally enacted in 1976. However, it was amended in 2023 and 2024. Those amendments expressly added sexual orientation and gender identity or expression to the list of protected classes, codifying protections that Michigan courts have previously recognized through interpretation. So just want to say that we want to make sure that it is in alignment with the Michigan Elliott Larson Act, Civil Rights Act. In no way, shape, or form are we saying that it is mandated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, Dr. Pugh.
I just want to call out the names of two giants that we lost in Saginaw in our community, but also in the education world. One, I saw the picture, she was in the photo that you posted in Saginaw, is Maddie Thompson, a board member, a longtime board member. Her husband was maybe one of the first African-American school board members, but longtime educators, very huge presence in our community, known as Aunt Maddie to so many, including myself. And then Marshall Thomas, Marshall Coach T. Thomas, who led several of our Saginaw High School Trojan basketball teams to championships, received countless awards for his work on the court as well as off the court, and being there for students and using sports as a way to help be present in the lives of so many, and just wanted to lift them up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh, and sorry for your losses. Thoughts and prayers with them. Okay. All right, we're going to move on. The future regular meeting dates of the State Board of Education are scheduled for Tuesday, January 13th, 2026 at 9:30 a.m., Tuesday, February 10th, 2026 at 9:30 a.m., Tuesday, March 10th, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. Is there any topics board members would like to recommend for future meeting agendas? You can please notify Ms. Evans of that in advance. All right. I would just, first of all, hope, I know we're getting closer, for those of you that may celebrate some holiday, wishing you all the best during the holiday season, whatever that may be, and hopefully that you get to spend some time with your family and your loved ones and get a little break. We get a little snow, but not too much that's going to intrude our holidays like it did today. And everyone made it through, and I'm glad everyone made it safe. The drive, we knew it was going to be a little late, delayed, so we're very happy that we were able to conduct the meeting with just a little bit of a delay. So I just want to thank everybody, presenters and everybody who participated today, and all those that helped make this a great meeting for me to work with all of you, my first meeting. So thank you for the warm welcome, and wishing you all the best, and all those out in the public, and parents, students, all those educational stakeholders. We're wishing you all the best during this holiday season. Thank you. And the meeting is adjourned.